They called her empty, broken, a stain on the bloodline. For 18 years, Leora Vance survived in the brutal Grey Fang territory, where every wolf awakened their beast by age 12. Every wolf except her. What they didn't know? She wasn't weak. She was poisoned. Tonight, while the entire pack celebrated the mating ceremony she was forbidden to attend, Leora would make a choice that would shatter everything they believed. She would walk into that gathering not as a victim, but as living proof of their darkest crime. If you're ready to see how a girl with no power brought an entire kingdom to its knees, stay until the end, hit that like button, and tell us in the comments what city you're watching from. The poison tasted like mint. Leora had been drinking it every morning for as long as she could remember. Her stepmother, Celeste, always brought it personally, a delicate porcelain cup filled with pale green liquid that smelled of herbs and honey. "Your tonic, dear," Celeste would say with that practiced smile. "For your health." For her health. That's what they told her for 18 years. The cup sat on her windowsill now, untouched, as Leora stared out at the celebration she would never be part of. Torches blazed across the ceremonial grounds, casting dancing shadows against the ancient stone amphitheater where the mating ceremony would take place. Wolves in their finest clothes moved like a living river toward the gathering, young women in silk gowns, young men with ceremonial markings painted across their bare shoulders. Everyone who had awakened their wolf would be there tonight. Everyone who mattered. Leora pressed her palm against the cold glass and felt nothing. No pulse of power, no beast stirring beneath her skin, just the hollow ache that had defined her entire existence. Empty, they called her, the girl who never shifted. In the Grey Fang territory, where survival meant strength and strength meant transformation, she was less than nothing. A knock at the door made her turn. She already knew who it was. "Leora?" Her stepsister's voice dripped with false concern. "Are you decent?" Leora didn't answer. The door opened anyway. Mira Vance swept in like she owned the room, because in every way that mattered, she did. At 19, she was everything Leora wasn't. Tall, graceful, with rich auburn hair that caught the firelight and golden eyes that marked her as a true wolf. She wore a crimson gown that hugged her curves, cut low enough to display the ceremonial necklace that signified her status as an eligible she-wolf. Still sulking? Mira examined her reflection in Leora's mirror, adjusting her hair with practiced ease. "I thought you'd be used to it by now." Leora turned away from the window. "What do you want?" "Nothing." Mira's smile was sharp as broken glass. "Just wanted to say goodbye before I leave. You know, since you won't be there to see me claim my mate." She paused, letting the words sink in like a blade between ribs. "Mother says you should stay in your room tonight. We wouldn't want you embarrassing the family." Embarrassing. The word tasted bitter. "I've been doing that my whole life, apparently." "Well, yes." Mira turned from the mirror, her expression shifting to something almost pitying. "But tonight is important, Leora. The Alpha King himself will be attending. Can you imagine if he saw you? If he knew we'd been harboring a defective wolf all these years?" Defective. The word they'd used since she was 12. The age every wolf's beast was supposed to emerge. The age Leora had waited by the full moon, praying, begging for something to happen. But the moon had risen and set, and she'd remained exactly what she was. Human, weak, worthless. "I won't embarrass you," Leora said quietly. "I'll stay here, like always." Mira's smile widened. "Good girl." She glided toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and Leora, don't forget to drink your tonic. Mother says you've been skipping doses." Her golden eyes gleamed with something Leora couldn't name. "We wouldn't want you getting sick, would we?" The door closed with a soft click. Leora stared at the cup on the windowsill for a long moment. The pale green liquid seemed to glow in the torchlight from outside. "For your health." She'd been drinking it every day since she was 10 years old, since her father remarried, since Celeste had arrived with her perfect daughter, and her promises to help poor Leora reach her potential. 8 years of tonics. 8 years of waiting for her wolf to emerge. 8 years of nothing. She picked up the cup, her hand trembling slightly. The scent of mint and honey filled her nostrils, familiar, comforting, safe. She raised it to her lips. then stopped. Something was wrong. Not with the tonic. She'd drunk this 1,000 times before. Something else. Something in the way Mira had smiled, the way her eyes had gleamed when she mentioned the doses. Don't forget to drink your tonic. Why would Mira care whether she drank it or not? Leora lowered the cup slowly, her mind racing. She thought of all the times Celeste had insisted she take it, all the times her stepmother had watched her drink it down, that practiced smile never wavering, all the times she'd felt dizzy afterward, weak, like something was draining from her bones. We wouldn't want you getting sick. What if she already was sick? What if she'd been sick for 8 years? The thought was insane. Her own family wouldn't, they couldn't. But as she stared at the pale green liquid, memory after memory crashed through her mind like waves. The way her father's new wife had arrived with trunks full of herbs and remedies. The way Celeste had taken such personal interest in Leora's condition. The way the tonic had started the same year her wolf should have emerged and never did. The way no doctor had ever been called. No healer consulted. Just Celeste, with her potions and her promises. Just Celeste. Leora's hand shook as she carried the cup to her desk. She found an empty vial, one she'd saved from an old perfume, and carefully poured a small amount of the tonic inside. She corked it, then hid it in the bottom of her jewelry box beneath the broken necklaces and tarnished rings no one cared about. Evidence. If she was right, if she wasn't just paranoid and desperate, she would need evidence. But how could she prove it? Who would even believe her? She was the empty wolf, the defective daughter. Even her own father barely looked at her anymore, too consumed with pack politics and his new family to notice the ghost living in his house. She was alone, completely, utterly alone. The sound of howling rose from the ceremonial grounds. The celebration had begun. Leora moved back to the window and watched as hundreds of wolves gathered in the amphitheater, their voices rising in the ancient songs of their people. She could see the great bonfire at the center, flames reaching toward the night sky, could see the alpha families taking their places in the stone seats of honor. And there, at the highest seat, a figure in midnight black, the Alpha King. Even from this distance, Leora could feel the power radiating from him. Theron Shadowmere, ruler of all the northern territories, the most feared and respected wolf in the kingdom. He'd come to witness the ceremony, to bless the matings, to remind every pack that they served at his pleasure. No one defied the Alpha King. No one even questioned him. Leora pressed her forehead against the glass, feeling the cool touch against her feverish skin. What was she even thinking? That she could walk down there and accuse her stepmother of poisoning her? That anyone would listen? That the Alpha King himself would care about one broken girl's desperate accusations? She would be laughed out of the territory, exiled, killed. But the alternative was staying here, drinking the tonic, fading away until she became the ghost they already believed her to be. No. The word rose from somewhere deep inside her, somewhere she'd buried beneath years of shame and silence. No. Not anymore. Leora straightened, her reflection staring back at her from the dark window. Pale skin, dark hair that hung limp around her shoulders, gray eyes that had learned to expect nothing. She looked like a corpse, like something already dead. But she wasn't. Not yet. She turned from the window and opened her wardrobe. Most of her clothes were simple, practical, the kind of things you wore when no one looked at you anyway. But in the back, pushed behind everything else, hung a single dress her mother had made before she died. Deep blue silk, embroidered with silver stars, fitted to a body Leora had never grown into. Her mother had called it her destiny dress. The gown she would wear when her wolf emerged. Leora pulled it out, dust falling from the fabric like snow. It smelled of cedar and memory. She held it up to her thin frame. It would hang loose on her, too big. Wrong. Perfect. She didn't know what she was going to do. Didn't have a plan beyond walking through those ceremonial grounds and refusing to disappear anymore. But if she was going to be humiliated, exiled, or killed, she would do it wearing the last gift her mother had given her. She would do it as someone who mattered. The amphitheater blazed with torchlight and ceremony. Leora stood at the edge of the gathering, her mother's blue dress hanging off her shoulders, her hair hastily pinned back with trembling fingers. No one had noticed her yet. They were too consumed with the ritual, with the powerful scent of wolves and smoke and destiny. She'd walked through the pack village like a spirit, moving through shadows and between buildings, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She'd expected someone to stop her, expected guards to grab her arms and drag her back to her room, but no one had, because no one watched the empty wolf. No one cared where she went. Until now. She took a step forward, then another. The ceremonial grounds spread before her in concentric circles, the bonfire at the center, surrounded by the young wolves being presented, then the families in their designated sections, then the alpha families in their stone seats, and finally, at the highest point, the Alpha King's throne. Theron Shadowmere sat perfectly still, his dark eyes surveying the ceremony with the patience of a predator. He wore black leather and silver chains, his presence so commanding that even the fire seemed to bend toward him. Leora's feet carried her forward before her mind could stop them. She walked past the outer ring where the unmated wolves whispered and laughed, past the family sections where her father sat beside Celeste and Mira, their attention focused on the ceremony, past the guards who stood at attention, their eyes scanning for threats that didn't look like a thin girl in an old dress. She walked until she reached the presentation circle, the sacred space where only those being offered for mating were allowed. That's when the whispers started. Is that? What is she doing here? Who let her in? Someone get her out before... Leora? Her father's voice cut through the murmurs like a whip. She turned to see him rising from his seat, his face flushing with fury and embarrassment. What in the name of the moon do you think you're doing? Celeste's hand flew to her mouth in practiced shock. Mira's golden eyes widened with something that might have been fear. The entire ceremony ground to a halt. Hundreds of wolves turned to stare at the empty girl who dared to walk into sacred ground. Leora's voice came out smaller than she'd wanted. I have something to say. You have nothing to say. Her father stormed toward her, grabbing her arm with bruising force. You were told to stay in your room. You were told, enough! The single word fell like a stone into still water. Every wolf in the amphitheater froze. Theron Shadowmere had risen from his throne. He descended the steps with the fluid grace of a born predator, his dark eyes locked on Leora with an intensity that made her knees weak. The crowd parted before him like water before a shark. He stopped 3 feet from her, close enough that she could see the silver flecks in his black eyes, the ancient scars that marked his arms, the power that radiated from him like heat from a forge. You interrupt a sacred ceremony, he said, his voice low and dangerous. You violate the protocols of your pack. You stand in the presentation circle without permission. He tilted his head slightly. Tell me why I shouldn't have you dragged from here in chains. Leora's father released her arm like it had burned him. The entire pack held its breath. She should run, should beg forgiveness, should collapse and let them take her away. Instead, she met the Alpha King's eyes and spoke the truth that had been burning inside her for 8 years. Because I'm not empty, she said. I was made empty, and I can prove it. Silence crashed over the amphitheater like a wave. Theron's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Interest. Calculation. Explain, he commanded. Leora's hand shook as she reached into the small pocket she'd sewn into her dress. She pulled out the vial of pale green liquid, holding it up so the firelight shone through it. For 8 years, my stepmother has been giving me this tonic. Every day, she told me it was for my health. Her voice grew stronger, but I never got better. I never awakened. I just got weaker, emptier. She turned to face Celeste, who sat frozen in her seat, her practiced smile finally cracking. Because it wasn't medicine, was it, Mother? This is absurd, Celeste said, but her voice wavered. The girl is delusional. She's always been broken, Leora cut her off. Defective? Yes, you've said that for years. She looked back at Theron. I want this tested. I want a healer to tell me what's in this vial. And if I'm right, if she's been poisoning me, I want justice. The crowd erupted in whispers. Her father stood paralyzed, his face cycling through shock, confusion, and dawning horror. Mira had gone pale, her golden eyes darting between her mother and the vial. Theron held out his hand. Give it to me. Leora placed the vial in his palm, her fingers brushing his skin for just a moment. The contact sent a shock through her body, like touching lightning, like waking from a dream. His eyes narrowed slightly. He'd felt it too. He uncorked the vial and inhaled, his expression darkening. Then he turned to the crowd. Healer Octavia, attend. An elderly woman in ceremonial robes emerged from the Alpha family's section. She took the vial from Theron, examined it, smelled it, even touched a drop to her tongue. The color drained from her face. Wolfsbane, she said, her voice trembling, mixed with shadowroot and midnight thistle, a suppression poison. She looked at Leora with wide eyes. Long-term exposure would prevent transformation entirely. It would make a wolf appear empty. The amphitheater exploded. Wolves were shouting, demanding answers. Pack members surged forward. Leora's father grabbed Celeste's arm, his face twisted with rage and betrayal. Mira was backing away, shaking her head, trying to disappear into the crowd. But Leora only watched Theron. The Alpha King's expression had gone cold as winter stone. He turned to Celeste with eyes that promised death. You poisoned your own daughter, he said softly, to keep her weak, to keep her from challenging your bloodline. He moved toward her with terrifying slowness. Do you deny it? Celeste stood, drawing herself up with desperate dignity. She's not my daughter. She's a mistake, a weak link in a powerful bloodline. Her mask had finally shattered, revealing the contempt beneath. I did what was necessary to protect my child's future, to ensure the pack wouldn't be burdened with enough. Theron's voice cracked like thunder. You have confessed before the Alpha King and the assembled packs. You have violated the most sacred laws of our people. He turned to the guards. Take her. Take the daughter as well. I smell her guilt in every breath. Guards moved forward. Celeste screamed, struggling against their grip. Mira tried to run but was caught before she'd gone 3 steps. Please, Celeste shrieked. Please, it was only to help her. To spare her the pain of... You spared her nothing, Theron said coldly. You stole her life, her wolf, her future. He glanced at Leora's father, who stood like a broken statue. And you? Did you know? I never... Her father's voice cracked. I trusted my wife. I thought Leora was just... You thought it was easier to believe she was broken than to question why. Theron's disgust was palpable. You are alpha of this pack. The responsibility falls on you as well. Her father collapsed to his knees. Theron turned back to Leora, and his expression softened, barely, but enough that she could breathe again. You showed courage tonight, he said. More than most wolves show in a lifetime. He studied her with those intense eyes. But courage isn't enough. The poison has been in your system for 8 years. We don't know if you can be saved. Leora's heart clenched. She'd been so focused on exposing the truth that she hadn't thought about what came after. What if the damage was permanent? What if her wolf was gone forever? There are healers, Theron continued, in the capital, specialists who deal with suppression poisons. He paused. I can have you taken there. It will be painful. There's no guarantee of success. I'll do it, Leora said immediately. Whatever it takes. Something flickered in his eyes. Approval, perhaps. Or recognition. Then you'll leave tonight. With me. He raised his voice to address the crowd. The ceremony is concluded. The guilty will face judgment at dawn. The pack will assemble to witness their punishment. His gaze swept over the gathered wolves. Let this be a lesson. There is no crime darker than betraying your own blood, and there is no mercy for those who do. The crowd began to disperse, wolves murmuring and casting glances at Leora, some pitying, some curious, some angry on her behalf. Her father remained on his knees, destroyed. Celeste and Mira were being dragged away, still screaming protests and curses. Leora stood alone in the presentation circle, wearing her mother's too large dress, trembling with exhaustion and fear and something else. Hope. For the first time in 8 years, she had hope. Theron gestured to one of his guards. Prepare a carriage. We leave within the hour. He looked at Leora. Get what you need from your room. Anything that matters. I don't have anything, she said honestly. Nothing that matters. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Then we leave now, Sheb. The carriage moved through the night like a shadow, pulled by 6 massive wolves in harness form. Leora sat across from the Alpha King, wrapped in a thick fur cloak one of his guards had provided, watching the Greyfang territory disappear behind them. She'd left without saying goodbye to her father, without looking back at the house that had been her prison for 8 years. There was nothing there she wanted to remember. "You're afraid," Theron said. It wasn't a question. Leora met his eyes. "Yes." "Good. Fear keeps you sharp." He leaned back, studying her. "What you did tonight was either very brave or very stupid. Perhaps both." "I didn't have a choice," she said. "Stay and fade away, or fight, and maybe die fighting. It seemed obvious." "Most people choose to fade away," he said quietly. "It's easier, safer." "I'm tired of safe." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I can see that." He was silent for a moment, then spoke again. "The healers will need to purge the poison from your system. It will be excruciating. You'll wish you'd never started." "I've been wishing I'd never started for 8 years, Leora said. "I can handle more." "We'll see." He turned to look out the window. "If you survive, if your wolf emerges, you'll owe me a debt. I don't help people for free." "What kind of debt?" "I haven't decided yet." His dark eyes glinted in the moonlight. "But when I call it in, you'll pay it, without question." Leora should have been terrified, should have realized she'd traded one prison for another, but all she felt was alive. "I'll pay it," she said. "Whatever it is." Theron's smile widened slightly. "You really are either very brave or very stupid." "Both," Leora said. "Definitely both." He laughed, a low, genuine sound that transformed his face from terrifying to almost handsome. "I think I'm going to enjoy watching what happens to you, Leora Vance." The carriage rolled on through the darkness, carrying her away from everything she'd known and toward a future she couldn't imagine. Somewhere deep inside her chest, in the hollow place where her wolf should have been, something stirred. Not power, not yet, but possibility. And for now, that was enough. They reached the capital city of Shadowkeep 3 days later. Leora had spent most of the journey sleeping, or trying to sleep, while her body fought against 8 years of accumulated poison. She'd been sick twice, sweating through her clothes, shivering despite the furs piled around her. Theron had watched her with clinical detachment, occasionally ordering his guards to give her water or broth. "If you die before we reach the healers," he'd said once, "it will be terribly inconvenient." She'd laughed deliriously. "I'll try not to." But she hadn't died. And when the carriage finally rolled through the massive gates of Shadowkeep, Leora forced herself to sit up and look. The city was enormous, 10 times larger than the Greyfang village, with buildings of white stone and dark timber rising toward the sky. Wolves moved through streets lit by enchanted lanterns that burned without flame. The scent of smoke and pine and power filled the air, so thick she could taste it. At the heart of the city, on a hill that overlooked everything, stood the Alpha King's palace. Black stone and silver spires, beautiful and terrible, like a crown made of night. The carriage didn't stop at the palace. Instead, it continued to a smaller building near the eastern wall, a stone structure covered in climbing vines and marked with the healer's symbol. Theron helped her down from the carriage himself, his grip strong and steady. "This is where I leave you," he said. "The healers will do what they can. If you survive, send word to the palace. And if I don't survive, then I'll find another investment." But his eyes said something different, something almost like concern. The door to the healing house opened, and a woman emerged. Not old like Octavia, but young, with silver white hair and eyes that held centuries of knowledge. She looked at Leora and smiled sadly. "The poisoned wolf," she said. "We've been expecting you." Leora glanced back at Theron one more time. He nodded once, a gesture of acknowledgement, or permission, or perhaps goodbye. Then she turned and followed the healer inside. The healing house smelled of herbs and smoke and something else, something wild and ancient. The healer led her through winding corridors to a chamber deep in the building's heart. The room was circular, with symbols carved into the floor and ceiling, and a pool of dark water at its center. "My name is Senna," the healer said, "and I'm going to save your life. But first, I'm going to hurt you more than you've ever been hurt before." Leora looked at the pool, then back at Senna. "Will it work?" "I don't know." Senna's honesty was almost comforting. "The poison has been in your system for 8 years. That's longer than anyone I've treated. You should be dead already." I'm stubborn. Good. You'll need to be. Senna gestured to the pool. The water is infused with lunar essence and purification minerals. It will draw the poison from your blood and bones, but it will feel like dying. You'll want to give up. You'll beg me to stop. I won't, Leora said. Everyone says that. Senna's expression was kind but firm. And everyone begs. Leora walked to the edge of the pool and looked down into the dark water. She could see her reflection, still pale, still thin, still empty. Not for much longer. She removed the fur cloak, then the blue dress, standing in just her thin shift. The chamber was cold, but she barely felt it. When you're ready, Senna said. Step in. Leora took a breath, possibly her last as an empty wolf, and stepped into the pool. The water was freezing. It wrapped around her ankles, then her calves, then her thighs as she waded deeper. When it reached her waist, the pain began. Not cold, not heat. Something worse, like her blood was turning to acid, like her bones were splintering from the inside out. She gasped, stumbling, but forced herself to keep moving. Deeper, deeper. When the water reached her chest, she started screaming. Senna's voice came from somewhere far away. Let it happen. Let it burn out the poison. Don't fight it. But every instinct screamed at her to fight, to climb out, to run. The pain was beyond anything she'd imagined, like her entire body was being unmade and remade in fire and ice and lightning. She went under. The dark water closed over her head, and Leora Vance, the empty wolf, the poisoned daughter, the girl they'd tried to erase, she drowned. And in the drowning, something woke up. Deep in her chest, in the hollow place where her wolf should have been, something stirred. Not gentle, not kind. Something feral and furious that had been caged for 8 years. Something that wanted blood. Leora's eyes snapped open underwater. The pain was still there, still burning, but now there was something else. Something pushing against her skin from the inside, demanding to be let out. Her wolf. It was angry. She burst from the water with a gasp, and Senna was there, grabbing her shoulders, pulling her to the edge of the pool. That's it, the healer said. That's it, I can feel it. Your wolf is fighting back. Let it come. Leora collapsed on the stone floor, water streaming from her hair, her body convulsing with pain and power, and 8 years of rage finally unleashed. Senna pressed a hand to her chest, and Leora felt the healer's magic pushing, helping, guiding. There, Senna whispered. Come on, little wolf. Come home. And somewhere deep inside, in the place that had been empty for so long, something howled. The howl that tore from Leora's throat wasn't human. It echoed through the healing chamber, bouncing off stone walls and shaking the carved symbols until dust rained from the ceiling. Senna stumbled backward, her eyes wide with shock and something else. Recognition. Impossible, the healer whispered. Leora's body convulsed on the cold floor, her spine arching until she thought it would snap. The pain had transformed into something else entirely. Not burning anymore, but pressure. Like something enormous was trying to burst through her skin from the inside. Her wolf wasn't just waking up, it was erupting. Senna! Leora gasped between spasms. What's happening to me? The healer dropped to her knees beside Leora, pressing both hands against her chest. Your wolf is stronger than I anticipated. Much stronger. The suppression didn't just hide it, it compressed it. 8 years of power, trapped and building. Senna's voice carried an edge of fear. When you transform, it's going to be violent. When? Leora managed. Not if. Oh, it's definitely happening. Right now. Senna grabbed Leora's shoulders. Listen to me carefully. When your wolf emerges, you're going to want to run, to hunt, to destroy everything that hurt you. You need to fight that instinct. Do you understand? Leora tried to nod, but another wave of agony crashed through her. She could feel her bones shifting, reshaping, could feel fur trying to push through her skin. The first transformation is always the hardest, Senna said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. But yours is going to be worse because... She didn't finish. Leora's scream cut her off as her body finally gave in to the change. It felt like being torn apart and rebuilt simultaneously. Her vision exploded into colors she'd never seen before. Scents became visible threads in the air. Sounds turned into physical sensations against her skin. She could hear heartbeats from 3 floors above them, could smell the fear on Senna's breath, could taste the moonlight filtering through the barred windows. Her hands became paws, her spine elongated. Her face stretched into a muzzle filled with teeth that could tear through bone. And then, in one final surge of impossible pain, silence. Leora stood on 4 legs in the center of the healing chamber, panting, shaking, and very much not empty anymore. She looked down at her paws, massive, white as fresh snow, tipped with claws like silver daggers. She turned her head and saw her reflection in the dark pool water. A white wolf stared back at her. Not gray like most wolves, not brown or black or silver, pure white, with eyes that glowed pale blue like ice in sunlight. Larger than any wolf she'd ever seen in the Grey Fang territory, nearly as large as an alpha. "No," Senna breathed. "No, that can't be right." Leora tried to speak, but what came out was a low growl that made the healer take another step back. She tried again, focusing, remembering her human voice, and this time managed words, rough and strange in this new form, but words nonetheless. "What? Am I?" Senna's face had gone pale as winter. "You're a white wolf. A moon-blessed. I've only seen one other in my entire life, and she was—" The healer stopped, shaking her head. "This changes everything, everything. What does that mean?" Leora took a step forward, marveling at the strength in her legs, the power coiled in her muscles. She felt like she could run forever, like she could fight an army and win. "It means you're not just any wolf, Leora. White wolves are rare, maybe 1 in 10,000 births. They're stronger, faster, more dominant than regular wolves." Senna's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "And they're always marked for leadership, always." The word should have filled Leora with joy. Instead, dread settled in her stomach like a stone. "The Alpha King," she said. "Does he know what I am?" He suspected. He must have. Senna moved to the window, staring out at the moonlit city. "When he brought you here, he told me to prepare for something unusual. I thought he meant the poison, but he sensed it, didn't he? Sensed what you could become." Leora's mind raced. Theron had said she would owe him a debt, had claimed her as an investment. If he'd known, or even suspected, that she was a white wolf. "He's going to use me," she said quietly. "Whatever debt he calls in, it's going to be something big." "Probably." Senna turned back to face her. "But right now we have a more immediate problem. You need to learn to shift back before dawn, and you need to learn to control your wolf before someone gets hurt." "I feel fine," Leora said. And she did, better than fine. She felt incredible, strong, whole. For the first time in 8 years, she felt like herself. "That's the problem." Senna walked toward her slowly, hands raised in a calming gesture. "You feel invincible. Your wolf thinks you are invincible, but you're still new to this, still raw. If you lose control—" A door slammed somewhere above them. Footsteps echoed through the building, heavy, purposeful, multiple people. Senna's expression shifted to alarm. "We need to get you shifted back, now." I don't know how," Leora admitted. The footsteps were getting closer. She could hear voices now, male, authoritative. "Close your eyes," Senna commanded. "Think of your human form. Picture yourself as you were, your hands, your face." "Healer Senna!" a voice boomed from the corridor outside. "Open this door, by order of the Alpha King." Senna cursed under her breath. "We're out of time." She looked at Leora with desperate urgency. "When they come in, do not attack, do not growl, do not show any aggression whatsoever. White wolves trigger dominance challenges instinctively. If you fight them—" The door burst open. 4 guards poured into the chamber, weapons drawn, and stopped dead at the sight of the massive white wolf standing in the center of the room. "Holy!" one of them started. "Back away!" Senna stepped between Leora and the guards. "She's under my protection. She's not a threat." The lead guard, a scarred veteran with graying hair, kept his sword pointed at Leora. "We received reports of an unauthorized transformation, a disruption in the healing house." His eyes never left Leora's. "We're here to contain the situation." "There's nothing to contain," Senna said firmly. This is a patient undergoing treatment. She's completely under control. Leora felt her wolf bristle at the sword pointed at her, felt the instinct to attack, to show these males who was dominant, to prove she wasn't afraid. She remembered Senna's warning and forced herself to sit, to lower her head slightly, to make herself appear non-threatening even as every fiber of her being screamed to fight. The guard's eyes narrowed. That's a white wolf. Yes, Senna said. White wolves are alpha class. They're supposed to be reported to the High Council immediately. I'm aware of protocol. Then you know we need to take her into custody until the Alpha King decides what to do with her. The guard's grip tightened on his sword. Step aside, healer. No. Senna's voice carried steel. She's my patient. She stays here until I deem her stable enough to... It's okay, Leora said, her wolf voice rumbling through the chamber. All 4 guards flinched. I'll go. Leora. I came here as the Alpha King's investment, Leora continued, meeting the lead guard's eyes. If he wants to collect, I won't hide. She stood, showcasing her full height, easily matching the largest guard. Take me to him. The guards exchanged glances. The lead one lowered his sword slightly. Can you shift back? Not yet. Then we'll need to restrain you. Protocol for uncontrolled transformations. I'm controlled, Leora growled. But if it makes you feel safer to put chains on me, go ahead. The guard studied her for a long moment, then sheathed his sword. No chains, but you walk between us. Any sign of aggression, and we put you down. Clear? Crystal? Senna grabbed Leora's muzzle, forcing eye contact. Be careful. The Alpha King isn't the only one who's going to have opinions about what you are. The High Council, the other Alphas, they're going to see you as a threat to their power. She lowered her voice. Trust no one, not even Theron. I don't trust anyone, Leora said. I learned that lesson 8 years ago. The healer's expression softened with something like sadness. Then maybe you'll survive this after all. The guards formed a square around Leora, 2 in front and 2 behind, as they escorted her through the healing house corridors. Wolves pressed against walls as they passed, staring at the massive white wolf with mixtures of awe and fear. Leora kept her head high, her pace steady. She'd spent 8 years being invisible, being nothing. Now she was something they couldn't ignore. They emerged into the pre-dawn darkness of Shadowkeep. The city was quieter than before, but not asleep. Wolves moved through the streets on various errands, and every single one of them stopped to stare as the procession passed. Is that White Wolf? I thought they were extinct. She's enormous. The whispers followed them like smoke. Leora felt her wolf's pride swell at the attention, at the fear and respect in their eyes. After a lifetime of being dismissed, being seen was intoxicating, dangerous too. She could feel how easy it would be to let her wolf take over completely, to embrace the power and forget the girl who'd been poisoned and broken. No, she told herself firmly, remember who did this to you. Remember why you're here. The palace loomed ahead, all black stone and silver spires. The massive doors opened as they approached, and Leora's paws clicked against marble floors as they entered an entrance hall that could have held her entire former village. But they didn't stop there. The guards led her deeper into the palace, through corridors lined with portraits of previous Alpha Kings, until they reached a set of double doors carved with scenes of wolves in battle. The lead guard knocked once. My lord, we've brought her. Enter. Theron's voice came from within. The doors opened. The chamber beyond was clearly a war room. A massive table dominated the center, covered with maps and reports. Weapons lined the walls. Windows overlooked the entire city, and in the east, the first hints of dawn were beginning to lighten the sky. Theron stood by the windows, his back to them. He wore the same black leather as before, but now Leora could see the silver marks running down his spine, the ceremonial scars of an Alpha King. Leave us, he said without turning. The guards hesitated. My lord, she hasn't mastered her transformation yet. If she... Leave. Us. The command in his voice was absolute. The guards bowed and retreated, closing the doors behind them. Silence filled the room. Leora waited, every sense hyper-aware. She could hear Theron's heartbeat, steady, controlled, could smell leather and steel and something else, something wild that her wolf recognized as alpha. "So," Theron said finally, turning to face her. His expression was unreadable. "A white wolf. I wondered, when I felt your power at the ceremony, wondered if the poison had hidden something extraordinary." He moved toward her slowly. "I wasn't wrong." Leora's instinct screamed at her to submit. This was an alpha, a king, a wolf who could destroy her with a thought. But she'd spent too many years on her knees. She met his eyes and held them. "You knew," she said. "That's why you helped me. Not kindness. Investment." "I'm never kind," Theron agreed, "but I'm practical. A white wolf, properly trained, properly loyal. She could be worth an army." He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that she could see the calculation in his dark eyes. "The question is whether you're worth the trouble of training." "I survived 8 years of poison," Leora said. "I survived the purge. I survived my first transformation without killing anyone." She took a step forward, into his space, refusing to back down. "I'm worth whatever trouble you think I'll be, and more." Something flickered in his expression, approval maybe, or amusement. Bold words from a wolf who can't even shift back yet. He circled her slowly, assessing. "But you're right about one thing. You survived. That counts for something." "What do you want from me?" Leora asked bluntly. "What's this debt you're going to collect?" Theron stopped in front of her again. "I haven't decided yet. There are complications. The High Council meets today. They're going to demand I explain why I brought an unknown white wolf into the capital without consulting them. They're going to suggest I lock you up, study you, control you. And what are you going to tell them?" "That you're mine," he said simply. "My wolf, my responsibility, my weapon if I choose to use you that way." He leaned closer, his voice dropping. "But that only works if you can prove you're not a liability. Can you do that, Leora? Tell me what you need me to prove." "Control," he gestured to her wolf form. "Shift back, right now. Show me you can command your beast instead of being commanded by it." Leora's stomach clenched. "I don't know how." "Then learn, fast." Theron moved to the war table, picking up a report and scanning it with apparent disinterest. "The council arrives in 2 hours. If you're still in wolf form when they get here, they'll vote to have you contained, and I won't stop them. You brought me here as an investment. Investments that don't perform get cut loose." He looked up from the report, his expression hard. "I don't have room for weakness in my kingdom, Leora. I don't care what you survived. I don't care about your tragic story. If you can't control yourself, you're useless to me. Understand?" The words stung more than they should have. She'd thought, foolishly, that maybe Theron had helped her for reasons beyond pure calculation, that maybe he'd seen something in her worth saving. But he was an alpha king. Sentiment was a luxury he couldn't afford. "Fine," Leora said. "How do I shift back?" "You already know how. You did it to become a wolf." Theron set down the report. "It's the same principle in reverse. Picture your human form. Feel your bones reshaping. Will it to happen." "I tried that with Senna. It didn't work." "Because you were panicking. Now you're angry." His eyes glinted. "Use it. Anger is a tool. Let it fuel your transformation instead of fighting it." Leora closed her eyes and tried to follow his instructions. Pictured her human body, thin, weak, breakable. Pictured her hands instead of paws, her face instead of a muzzle. Nothing happened. "You're trying to go back to who you were," Theron said. "That girl is gone. The poison burned her away. You need to picture who you are now." "I don't know who that is," Leora admitted. "Yes, you do." He moved closer, and she felt his hand touch her head. Not aggressive, but firm. "You're the girl who walked into a sacred ceremony and accused her family of poisoning her. You're the wolf who survived a purge that should have killed you. You're the white wolf who just stared down an alpha king and refused to submit." His voice lowered. "You're strong, Leora. Stop picturing yourself as weak." The words struck something deep inside her. She focused on that feeling, the strength, the power, the absolute certainty that she would never be empty again. And this time, when she pictured her human form, it wasn't the broken girl from the Greyfang territory. It was someone new, someone harder, Someone who could stand in front of an alpha king and not flinch. The transformation was faster this time, less painful. Her bones shifted smoothly, her fur receded, her muzzle shortened back into a human face. Within seconds, she was standing on two legs again, naked and shaking, but human. Theron immediately turned away, grabbing a robe from a nearby chair and tossing it to her. Better. The council might still try to lock you up, but at least they can't claim you're uncontrolled. Leora wrapped the robe around herself, her legs unsteady. What happens at this meeting? They'll demand answers. I'll give them the minimum necessary. He turned back to face her, his expression serious. But here's what you need to understand. White wolves are political dynamite. The last one who emerged tried to overthrow the entire council system. It took 5 alpha armies to bring her down. I'm not trying to overthrow anyone. Doesn't matter. They'll see you as a potential threat regardless. Theron crossed his arms. Your best chance is to appear useful but not ambitious. Strong but not challenging. Can you do that? You want me to play weak? I want you to play smart. He moved to the windows, watching the sunrise. The council fears change. They fear power they can't control. If you walk in there acting like a challenge to their authority, they'll unite against you. But if you walk in as my subordinate, my student, they might tolerate you long enough to see your value. Leora's pride burned at the suggestion. After fighting so hard to prove she wasn't weak, he wanted her to pretend submission. But she understood the game, and she'd played it before. Years of lowering her eyes, of making herself small, of surviving by being overlooked. I can do that, she said quietly. Good. Theron glanced at her. There's a bathing chamber through that door. Clean yourself up. There's clothes in the wardrobe. Find something that fits. When you're ready, someone will escort you to the council chamber. Leora started toward the door, then paused. Theron, what you said about owing you a debt, is this it? Playing politics for the council? No. His answer was immediate and definite. When I call in your debt, you'll know. This is just survival. The debt is something else entirely. She wanted to ask what, but the look in his eyes told her the conversation was over. She went into the bathing chamber and closed the door. The room was stunning, all marble and silver, with a pool-sized bath already filled with steaming water. Leora shed the robe and sank into the heat, letting it ease her trembling muscles. She stared at her reflection in the water. Same dark hair, same gray eyes. But something fundamental had changed. She looked harder. Like the girl she'd been had been burned away, leaving someone else behind. Someone who could survive this. She washed quickly, then found the wardrobe Theron had mentioned. Most of the clothes were too large, clearly meant for male guards. But she found a simple black dress that fit reasonably well. No jewelry, no ornamentation. Nothing that would draw attention. Perfect. When she emerged, a female servant was waiting, a middle-aged wolf with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair. This way, miss, the woman said, gesturing down the corridor. The council is assembling. Leora followed her through the palace, her heart hammering. She'd faced her stepmother's poison, faced the purge, faced her first transformation. But somehow, walking into a room full of powerful wolves who saw her as a threat felt more terrifying than all of it combined. The servant led her to a set of massive doors guarded by 2 armed wolves. They opened the doors without question, revealing a circular chamber with tiered seating rising toward the ceiling. 12 wolves sat in high-backed chairs arranged in a semicircle, the High Council. And at the center, in a throne-like chair raised above the others, sat Theron. Every head turned as Leora entered. "Ah," said an elderly male wolf with a white beard and eyes like frozen amber. "The White Wolf. We were just discussing you." Leora stopped at the center of the chamber, acutely aware of 12 pairs of eyes studying her like she was a specimen under glass. "Counselors," Theron said smoothly, "this is Leora Vance. As I informed you this morning, she emerged as a white wolf during treatment for suppression poisoning." Suppression poisoning that went undetected for 8 years, a female counselor with sharp features noted. Rather convenient, don't you think, that she only revealed this after the Alpha King showed interest? Are you suggesting she poisoned herself? Theron's voice carried an edge of danger. I'm suggesting, the woman continued carefully, that white wolves have historically been deceptive, manipulative. We'd be fools to take her story at face value. I have a healer's testimony, Theron said. Physical evidence of the poison, witnesses from the Grey Fang territory who saw... We're not questioning whether she was poisoned, the bearded elder interrupted. We're questioning why you brought her here, why you're protecting her, what you intend to do with a white wolf in your possession. The chamber went silent. This was the real question, the one they'd been dancing around. Theron leaned back in his throne, his expression unreadable. I intend to train her, to see if she's worth the investment. And if she is? Another counselor asked. What then? Do you plan to create your own personal white wolf enforcer? Do you remember what happened the last time? I remember, Theron cut him off coldly. I was there when we put Morgana down. I know exactly what a white wolf can do when they go rogue. His eyes found Leora's across the chamber. That's why this one won't be going anywhere unsupervised. She stays in the palace, under guard, under my direct authority. If she proves useful, perhaps that arrangement continues. If not, he shrugged. Then we deal with her accordingly. The casual way he discussed her fate should have terrified Leora. Instead, she felt oddly calm. This was the game. This was survival. The girl should speak for herself, the sharp-featured woman said. Tell us, Leora Vance, what do you want from this arrangement? All eyes turned to her. This was the test, the moment where she could either play it safe or make a catastrophic mistake. Leora thought of Senna's warning, of Theron's advice, of 8 years spent learning to read people, to understand what they wanted to hear. But she also thought of the girl in the blue dress who'd walked into that ceremony, the one who'd decided she was done being invisible. I want what was stolen from me, Leora said clearly. 8 years of my life, 8 years of being weak when I should have been strong. I can't get those years back, but I can make sure no one else loses theirs. She met each counselor's eyes in turn. Train me, use me, test me. I don't care. Just don't ask me to go back to being nothing, because I'd rather die than be empty again. Silence filled the chamber. Then the bearded elder smiled, a cold, calculating expression. Interesting. Most white wolves promise loyalty, promise service. You promise what? Revenge. I promise not to be a victim, Leora said. Everything else is negotiable. Several counselors exchanged glances. Theron's expression remained neutral, but she thought she saw approval flicker in his eyes. Very well, the elder said finally. You may train under the Alpha King's supervision, but understand this, girl, you will be watched, constantly. Any sign of aggression toward the council, any indication that you're building power bases or forming alliances, and we will not hesitate to put you down like we did Morgana. Are we clear? Crystal, Leora said. Then this session is concluded. The elder stood, and the other counselors followed. Alpha King, she's your responsibility. Don't make us regret this decision. They filed out, leaving Leora alone with Theron in the vast chamber. He descended from his throne and walked toward her, his expression still unreadable. That was either brilliant or suicidal, he said. I haven't decided which. I told them the truth, Leora said. The truth is often suicidal. He stopped in front of her. But it worked. They think you're too honest to be scheming, too damaged to be ambitious. He paused. Are you? I don't know yet, Leora admitted. A week ago, I was nobody. Now I'm a white wolf in the Alpha King's palace. I'm still figuring out what that means. Figure it out fast, because tomorrow your real training begins. Theron turned to leave, then stopped. One more thing. Your stepmother and stepsister. The council has agreed to your sentencing request. They'll be exiled at dawn. If you want to watch, you're permitted to attend. Leora's breath caught. She'd almost forgotten about them in the chaos of everything else. Celeste and Mira, the ones who'd poisoned her, who'd stolen her life. Tomorrow, they would face justice, and she would be there to see it. I'll attend, she said. Theron nodded once and left the chamber, leaving Leora standing alone in the vast circular room where her fate had just been decided. She looked up at the empty throne, at the symbols of power carved into the walls, at the windows showing the rising sun over Shadowkeep. She'd survived the poison, survived the purge, survived the council. Now came the hard part, surviving what she'd become. The exile platform stood at the edge of the city, where Shadowkeep's stone walls gave way to the wild territories beyond. Leora arrived before dawn, escorted by 2 silent guards who positioned themselves at a respectful distance. They'd learned quickly that she didn't run, didn't need chains. She simply waited. The platform itself was ancient, weathered wood stained dark by centuries of judgment. Iron posts rose from each corner, meant for binding prisoners during public punishments. But exile required no binding, just humiliation. Just the knowledge that you were being cast out from everything you'd ever known into a wilderness that didn't care whether you lived or died. Leora pulled her cloak tighter against the pre-dawn cold and tried to feel something. Satisfaction. Vindication. The sweet taste of revenge. Instead, she felt hollow. "You came." The voice made her turn. Theron emerged from the shadows, dressed for combat rather than ceremony, leather armor, dual blade strapped to his back. "I wasn't certain you would." "Why wouldn't I? This is what I asked for." "Because watching someone get what they deserve isn't always as satisfying as we imagine." He moved to stand beside her, both of them facing the empty platform. "Sometimes it just reminds us of what we lost along the way." Leora didn't answer. Couldn't, because he was right, and she hated that he understood. The sky began to lighten in the east, painting the clouds in shades of blood and gold. Torches blazed to life around the platform as wolves began to gather, not the massive crowd from the mating ceremony, but enough. Witnesses, people who needed to see that justice existed in the Alpha King's territory. Then they brought out the prisoners. Celeste walked with her head high, defiant even in chains. They'd stripped her of her fine clothes, leaving her in a simple gray shift that marked her as condemned. Her dark hair hung loose around her shoulders, and her eyes, those calculating eyes that had smiled while feeding Leora poison, swept across the crowd with contempt. Mira was less composed. Her auburn hair was tangled, her face blotchy from crying. She stumbled as the guards pushed her forward, nearly falling before catching herself on the platform's edge. A third figure followed them, Leora's father. She hadn't expected him. He wasn't being exiled, hadn't been convicted of anything except willful blindness. But he walked behind his wife and daughter like a ghost, his face aged a decade in the few days since the ceremony. The guards chained Celeste and Mira to the posts. Her father stood off to the side, unbound but trapped by something worse than iron. A herald stepped forward, unfurling a scroll. By order of the High Council and decree of the Alpha King, Celeste Vance and Mira Vance are hereby convicted of the crime of suppression poisoning, a violation of the most sacred laws of our people. Their punishment, permanent exile from all wolf territories. They are cast out, forbidden to seek pack protection, forbidden to return under penalty of death. Let their names be struck from pack records. Let their bloodline be erased. The words echoed across the platform. Celeste's expression never wavered, but Mira broke. "Please!" She pulled against her chains, her voice cracking. "Please, I didn't know. Mother never told me what was in the tonic. I thought we were helping her." Tears streamed down her face as she turned to Leora. "You have to believe me. I never wanted to hurt you." Leora felt every eye turn to her, felt the weight of the moment, the expectation that she would rage, would demand their deaths, would show them the same cruelty they'd shown her. Instead, she stepped forward until she was close enough to see her stepsister's face clearly. "You knew," Leora said quietly. "Maybe not the details, maybe not the exact poison, but you knew I was being suppressed. You knew because you benefited from it every single day." She glanced at Celeste. "You both did." "I was 17 when it started," Mira sobbed. "What was I supposed to do?" "Tell someone. Help me. Do anything except watch me fade away while you took everything that should have been mine." Leora's voice remained steady, empty of the rage Mira probably expected. "But you didn't. You chose your comfort over my life. Now you get to see what life without comfort looks like." She turned to walk away, but Celeste's voice stopped her. "Do you feel powerful now?" Her stepmother's words dripped venom. "Standing there in your borrowed clothes, in your borrowed palace, playing at being important? You're still the same weak little girl who couldn't survive without someone else fighting your battles." Leora turned back slowly. "You're right. I couldn't fight my own battles because you poisoned me for 8 years to make sure I'd never be strong enough to fight back." She met Celeste's hate-filled eyes. "But I survived anyway. I survived you, and now I'm the white wolf who gets to watch you walk into the wilderness with nothing but the clothes on your back. Who's weak now?" Celeste lunged against her chains, snarling. "You think you've won? You think being the Alpha King's pet makes you safe? You're a novelty girl, a curiosity. The moment he gets bored, the moment you're no longer useful, they'll throw you away just like we did. The words hit harder than they should have, because part of Leora wondered if Celeste was right. Maybe, Leora said, but at least I'll have the chance to find out. You won't even have that. The herald cleared his throat. If there are no further words, he looked to Theron, who nodded. Then let the sentence be carried out. Guards unlocked the chains. Celeste rubbed her wrists and walked to the platform's edge with her head high, refusing to show fear. Mira had to be dragged, still sobbing, still begging for mercy that wouldn't come. Leora's father finally moved. He stepped forward, his voice breaking. Leora, please, I know I failed you. I know I should have seen, should have questioned, but she's still my wife. Mira is still my daughter. Show mercy, for my sake, if not theirs. The crowd went silent. Even Celeste stopped at the platform's edge, turning to see what Leora would say. You never showed me mercy, Leora said to her father. When I begged you to notice me, when I tried to tell you something was wrong, when I became invisible in my own home, you let it happen because it was easier than confronting your wife. She felt something crack in her chest. I loved you, and you chose them. I know. Tears ran down his weathered face. And I'll carry that shame until I die. But please, Leora, you're not like them. You're better than this. Don't let revenge make you into something you'll hate. The words struck deep. Because wasn't that what Celeste had just accused her of? Playing at power while losing herself in the process? Leora looked at Theron. He stood perfectly still, watching her, his expression unreadable. This was her choice, her judgment. The sentence stands, she said finally, but I'll add one mercy. Father, you can go with them if you want. Exile yourself voluntarily. Be with your wife and daughter in the wilderness, or stay in the pack and live with what you allowed to happen. Choose. Her father's face crumpled. He looked at Celeste, at Mira, then back at Leora. The choice was impossible. Abandon everything for family, or abandon family for everything. He couldn't finish. Couldn't choose. Time's up, Theron said coldly. Carry out the sentence. Guards pushed Celeste and Mira off the platform. They stumbled down the steps toward the gate that led to the wildlands. Celeste recovered quickly, squaring her shoulders and walking forward with dignity. Mira collapsed halfway, had to be hauled up by her mother, and half-dragged the rest of the way. Leora's father stood frozen on the platform, watching them go. He'd made his choice through inaction, the same way he'd chosen for 8 years. The gates opened. Morning light spilled across the wild lands beyond, endless forest, dangerous and indifferent. Celeste and Mira crossed the threshold, and the gates slammed shut behind them. It was done. The crowd began to disperse, murmuring among themselves. Leora stood rooted to the spot, watching the two figures grow smaller as they walked into the wilderness, waiting for the satisfaction to come. It didn't. Come, Theron said, touching her shoulder briefly. We need to talk. She followed him away from the platform, through the waking city to the palace. But instead of leading her to his war room, he took her to the training grounds, a vast courtyard surrounded by high walls with weapon racks, combat circles, and obstacles scattered across packed dirt. 3 wolves waited there, 2 males and a female, all wearing training leathers, all radiating the kind of power that marked them as elite warriors. These are your instructors, Theron said. Cade handles weapons and combat tactics. He gestured to a scarred male with ice-blue eyes. Vera teaches transformation control and wolf combat. The female, compact and dangerous-looking, nodded curtly. And Marcus specializes in tracking, survival, and field operations. The third wolf, lean and rangy, studied Leora like she was prey he was evaluating. I don't understand, Leora said. What is this? Your training. Theron's tone left no room for argument. Starting now. You wanted not to be weak? Good. We're going to make sure you never are again. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Leora? These 3 don't care that you're a white wolf, don't care about your tragic backstory. If you can't keep up, they'll break you. Understand? She met the 3 instructors' eyes and saw 0 sympathy, only calculation. I understand. Good. Theron walked away, leaving her alone with the three wolves who were apparently going to turn her into something useful or destroy her trying. Cade stepped forward first. White wolf or not, you're starting from nothing. You've never been trained to fight, never learned to use your transformation as a weapon. You're raw material, and we're going to shape you. He picked up 2 training swords from a nearby rack and tossed one to her. Let's see what you can do. Leora caught the sword awkwardly. She'd never held a weapon before. Didn't know the first thing about using one. Cade attacked without warning. She barely got the blade up in time to block. The impact jarred her arms, nearly knocked the sword from her grip. He pressed the attack, moving with fluid precision, forcing her backward. Fight back, he barked. She tried, swung wildly, desperately. He deflected every attempt with almost casual ease, then swept her legs out from under her. She hit the ground hard, the breath knocked from her lungs. Pathetic. Cade stood over her. Again. She struggled to her feet, gripped the sword tighter. He attacked again, and again she found herself on the ground within seconds. Again. Over and over. He knocked her down, commanded her to rise, knocked her down again. No instruction, no guidance, just brutal, relentless demonstration of how far she had to go. After the 10th time, Leora stayed down, gasping for air, her body screaming in pain. Done already? Vera asked, her tone mocking. The white wolf can't handle a few training rounds. I don't know how to fight, Leora snapped. I've never... We know. Marcus circled her slowly. That's the point. You need to learn that your wolf form means nothing without skill. That being special doesn't make you strong. He knelt beside her. But here's the good news. You're going to learn faster than any wolf we've ever trained. Know why? Why? Because you're terrified of being weak again. His smile was sharp. Fear is an excellent teacher. Leora pushed herself upright, ignoring the protest from her bruised muscles. Then teach me. Cade's expression shifted slightly, maybe approval. That's more like it. On your feet. She stood, raised the sword. This time, when he attacked, she focused on watching his movements instead of just reacting. Still got knocked down, but she learned something. Saw how he shifted his weight before striking. Saw the pattern in his attacks. Better, Cade said. Again. They drilled her for hours. Cade with weapons, Vera with transformation exercises, Marcus with endurance training. By midday, Leora could barely stand. Her hands bled from blisters. Her muscles had moved past pain into a numb burning that suggested they'd given up entirely. Lunch break, Vera announced, tossing her a water skin. 15 minutes. Then we start real training. Leora stared at her. That wasn't real training? That was assessment. Now we know what we're working with. Vera's smile was predatory. The real training is going to be much worse. The next 2 weeks blurred into an endless cycle of pain and progress. Leora woke before dawn, trained until her body gave out, was allowed minimal sleep, then started again. The instructors showed no mercy, no patience with failure. But she learned to read an opponent's body language, learned to use her smaller size as an advantage rather than a weakness. Learned to transition between human and wolf form in the middle of combat, using the transformation itself as a weapon. Learned that being a white wolf meant nothing if she didn't have the skill to back it up. On the 15th day, something changed. Leora was sparring with Cade, real combat now, not just training exercises. When she finally saw the opening, his attack pattern had a flaw, a split-second vulnerability when he committed to a strike. She'd noticed it days ago but hadn't been fast enough to exploit it. Until now. She ducked his swing, pivoted inside his guard, and slammed her shoulder into his chest with all her weight behind it. He stumbled backward, actually stumbled, and her training sword found his throat. They froze. Cade stared at her, then slowly smiled. Finally, took you long enough. Leora lowered her sword, breathing hard. It was the first time she'd scored a clear hit on any of them. Don't get cocky, Vera called from across the training ground. Cade went easy on you. Like hell I did, Cade said, but his eyes held respect now. She's learning. Faster than I expected. Marcus approached, carrying a scroll. Well, she'll need to learn even faster. This just came from the Alpha King. He handed the scroll to Leora. She unrolled it, reading quickly. The words made her blood run cold. "There's been an attack," she said slowly, "on the eastern border. Multiple packs reporting wolves who've lost their transformations. Just like what happened to me." She looked up. "It's not random. Someone's targeting wolves with suppression poison." "The Alpha King wants you on the investigation team," Marcus said. "Congratulations, your first field mission." "I'm not ready." "No, you're not." Theron's voice cut across the training ground. He strode toward them, his expression grim. "But we're out of time. The attacks are escalating. 3 packs in the last week. Whoever's doing this knows what they're doing, and they're getting bolder." He stopped in front of Leora. "I need you to identify the poison, see if it's the same compound that was used on you, maybe find a pattern we're missing." "Why me?" "You have healers, investigators, because you survived it. Because you know what suppression feels like from the inside." His dark eyes bore into hers. "Because the victims trust someone who's been through it more than they'll trust my officials. You're going." "When?" "Tomorrow at dawn. Kate and Marcus will accompany you. Vera stays here to continue training other recruits." He paused. "This is dangerous, Leora. If the people behind this realize we're investigating, they'll come after you, and they won't care that you're a white wolf or that you're under my protection." "Good," Leora said. "I'd like to meet them." Theron's expression shifted to something almost like amusement. "I'm starting to think Celeste was right about one thing. You are becoming dangerous. You wanted me trained, wanted me useful." Leora met his eyes. "This is what useful looks like." "So it is." He turned to the instructors. "Get her ready. Weapons, supplies, field gear. I want her equipped like any other operative." He glanced back at Leora. "And Leora? Try not to die on your first mission. The council would be insufferable about it." He left. The 3 instructors exchanged glances. "Well," Cade said finally, "this should be interesting. Come on, White Wolf. Let's make sure you know how to stay alive out there." They spent the rest of the day on intensive field training, tracking, concealment, emergency protocols. Marcus drilled her on survival scenarios until she could recite responses in her sleep. Vera taught her emergency transformation techniques for when she was injured or exhausted. Cade made sure she could handle her weapons with her eyes closed. By nightfall, Leora was exhausted and terrified and more alive than she'd felt in weeks. She returned to her chambers in the palace, a small suite near the training grounds that had become her home. Someone had left a package on her bed. She unwrapped it carefully, revealing a set of combat leathers in deep black fitted to her measurements. A note was tucked inside. "For the white wolf who refuses to stay hidden, try not to get blood on it immediately." T. Leora held up the leather jacket, feeling the quality craftsmanship, the reinforced seams designed to handle transformation stress. It was beautiful, practical, deadly. She tried it on, studying herself in the mirror. The girl from the Greyfang territory was completely gone now. In her place stood someone hard and dangerous, wearing the Alpha King's colors, armed and trained and ready for war. She should have felt proud. Instead, she felt the weight of what she was becoming. The knock at her door was unexpected. She opened it to find a young messenger, eyes downcast. "Message for Leora Vance," the boy said. "Urgent, from the healing house." Leora's heart clenched. "Is Senna all right?" "She's fine, miss. But she says you need to come immediately. She's found something about your case. Something the Alpha King needs to know." Leora grabbed her cloak. "Take me to her." They hurried through the palace and across the city to the healing house. Senna met her at the door, her silver-white hair disheveled, her expression troubled. "Thank the moon you came quickly," the healer said, pulling her inside. "I've been analyzing the poison compound we extracted from your system, comparing it to samples from the recent attacks." She led Leora to her workroom, where vials and papers covered every surface. "Look at this." She held up 2 vials. The pale green liquid from Leora's tonic, and a darker compound from the recent victims. "They're similar but not identical," Senna explained. "Same base ingredients, but the recent attacks use a more aggressive formula, faster acting, more dangerous." She set down the vials. "But here's what's disturbing. Whoever created both compounds has expert-level knowledge of wolf physiology and suppression mechanics. This isn't some random poisoner. This is someone who studied this for years." "Like a healer?" Leora asked. Exactly like a healer. Senna's expression was grim. I've been checking the guild records. There's only one person with the knowledge and access to create something this sophisticated who's gone missing in the last 3 months. Who? My former teacher, Master Healer Aldrich. He disappeared from the Northern Territories around the same time the attack started. Senna pulled out a worn portrait. He was obsessed with wolf bloodlines, believed that packs were being weakened by allowing inferior wolves to breed and transform. I thought it was just academic philosophy. But what if he decided to act on it? Leora stared at the portrait, an elderly male wolf with piercing eyes and a cold smile. Where would he be now? I don't know. He had contacts throughout the territories, safe houses, followers who believed in his theories. Senna grabbed Leora's arm. But if he's behind this, you need to tell the Alpha King, tonight. Because the attacks aren't random, they're testing. And when he's refined the formula enough, she trailed off, leaving the terrible implication hanging. He'll try to suppress entire packs, Leora finished, just like Celeste did to me, but on a massive scale. Yes. And if he succeeds, Senna's voice dropped to a whisper. We're talking about hundreds, maybe thousands of wolves stripped of their power, entire bloodlines erased. Leora's mind raced. The mission tomorrow was suddenly far more critical than she'd realized. This wasn't just an investigation, it was stopping a catastrophe. I need to tell Theron, she said. Now! She ran through the dark streets back to the palace, her new combat leathers allowing her to move faster than she'd thought possible. The guards at the entrance tried to stop her, but she snarled her urgency and they stepped aside. She found Theron in his war room, bent over maps with several advisors. He looked up sharply as she burst through the door. Leora? What? We know who's behind the attacks, she said breathlessly. Senna identified the poison. It's the same healer who created the compound used on me, or someone using his formula, Master Healer Aldrich. He's disappeared and the attack started right after. The room went silent. Theron's expression darkened. Aldrich, he said slowly. I know that name. He presented a paper to the council 5 years ago. Wanted permission to research suppression methods for genetic improvement of pack bloodlines. He straightened. We denied him. Told him the research violated fundamental laws. Apparently he decided to continue anyway, Leora said. One of the advisors spoke up. If Aldrich is behind this, we're in serious trouble. He trained half the healers in the Northern Territories. He has resources, knowledge, and a network of supporters. Then we shut down his network, Theron said coldly, starting with tomorrow's mission. He looked at Leora. This changes your objective. You're not just investigating anymore. You're hunting. Find Aldrich's trail. Find his contacts. Find anything that leads us to him before he refines that poison further. And when we find him, capture him alive if possible. We need to know how many others are involved, where he's getting his supplies, what his endgame is. Theron's eyes glinted. But if he resists, eliminate the threat. Leora nodded, feeling the weight of the mission settle on her shoulders. This was what she'd asked for, to be useful, to fight, to matter. But standing here in the war room, surrounded by maps of territories and reports of victims, she realized the scale of what she'd signed up for. This wasn't just about her revenge anymore. It was about stopping someone from doing to hundreds of wolves what had been done to her. I'll find him, she promised. I know you will. Theron dismissed the advisors with a gesture. When they were alone, he moved closer. This is going to be dangerous, Leora. Aldrich won't hesitate to use his poison on you again, and this time we might not be able to purge it. I'm aware. Are you? He studied her face. Because I need to know you understand what you're risking. You've only been a wolf for 2 weeks. You're still learning, still adjusting. Most operatives train for years before field missions like this. I don't have years. Leora met his gaze steadily. Those victims out there don't have years. Every day we wait, Aldrich gets closer to perfecting his formula. So yes, I understand the risk, and I'm going anyway. Something shifted in Theron's expression, pride maybe, or concern. You really have changed, haven't you? The girl from the ceremony wouldn't have said that. That girl died in the purge, Leora said quietly. I'm what survived. He reached out, and for a moment she thought he might touch her face. Instead, he straightened her collar with efficient, impersonal hands. Get some sleep. You leave in 4 hours. He turned back to his maps. And Leora, come back alive. I don't like losing investments. She left the war room and returned to her chambers, but sleep was impossible. She paced the small space, her mind churning with everything that could go wrong. What if she failed? What if Aldrich was already gone, already spreading his poison across the territories? What if she ended up back where she started, empty, powerless, erased? The thought terrified her more than death. She was still pacing when the knock came at her door. She opened it to find Cade, fully armed and ready for travel. Couldn't sleep either? He asked. Too much in my head. Yeah, first mission's always like that. He leaned against the doorframe. Listen, I know Marcus and I are supposed to be your escorts tomorrow, supposed to keep you safe and make sure you don't do anything stupid. He paused. But you should know. If it comes down to catching Aldrich or protecting you, I'm choosing the mission. Every time. The blunt honesty was almost refreshing. Good. That's what I'd want. Really? He looked surprised. I'm not here to be protected, Leora said. I'm here to be useful. If I die stopping Aldrich, at least I'll have mattered. Cade studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You know, when Theron first brought you back, I thought you were going to be a liability, a pet project that would get us all killed. He smiled slightly. I'm starting to think I was wrong. Don't get sentimental, you'll ruin your reputation. He laughed. Fair enough. Get some rest, White Wolf. Tomorrow, the real work begins. He left, and Leora finally collapsed onto her bed. She stared at the ceiling, watching shadows dance across the stone, and thought about the journey ahead. Somewhere in the territories, Aldrich was poisoning wolves, creating victims, stealing their power the same way Celeste had stolen hers. And tomorrow, she was going to hunt him down. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in weeks, dreamed of running through endless forest, not fleeing, but hunting, not afraid, but dangerous. When she woke 3 hours later, she was ready. The Eastern Territories waited, and somewhere in them, a monster who needed to be stopped. Leora Vance, the white wolf who refused to be erased, was coming for him. They rode east as the sun broke over Shadowkeep's walls. 3 wolves on horseback, armed for war and investigation both. Cade led, his ice-blue eyes constantly scanning the tree line. Marcus rode behind, silent and watchful. Leora kept pace between them, her new combat leathers feeling like a second skin, the weight of weapons at her sides both comforting and terrifying. First target is Ravenclaw Pack, Cade said as they cleared the city gates. 15 wolves reported loss of transformation over the last 3 days. Alpha Gareth is holding them in quarantine, trying to contain whatever they think is spreading. It's not spreading, Leora said. It's being delivered. We know that. They don't. Marcus urged his horse closer, which means they're going to be hostile when we start asking questions. Nobody likes admitting their pack's been infiltrated. The journey took 2 days of hard riding through dense forest and rocky terrain. Leora's muscles screamed from the constant movement, but she refused to show weakness. Cade and Marcus watched her with evaluating eyes, waiting for her to ask for rest, to complain. She didn't give them the satisfaction. On the second evening, as they made camp in a clearing, Marcus finally spoke up. You ride better than I expected. Most wolves from frontier territories haven't had much practice with horses. I didn't, Leora admitted, tending to her mount with care. But pain is an excellent teacher. You either learn or fall off. Cade laughed from where he was building their fire. Stubborn. That'll keep you alive out here. He gestured to the supplies. Get some food in you. Tomorrow we hit Ravenclaw territory, and Alpha Gareth isn't known for his hospitality. They ate in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Leora stared into the flames and thought about what they might find tomorrow. More victims like her. More wolves who'd had their futures stolen by poison they never saw coming. Question, Marcus said suddenly. When you were suppressed, did you ever want to give up? Just accept that you'd never transform? Leora considered the question carefully. Every day. It would have been easier to stop hoping, stop fighting, just fade away like they wanted. She met his eyes across the fire. But something in me refused. Even when I didn't know why I kept going anyway. That's what makes you dangerous, Marcus said. Not the white wolf, not the power. That stubbornness. He smiled slightly. Aldrich won't be expecting it. Good, Leora said. I like being underestimated. They reached Ravenclaw territory late the next afternoon. The pack village was smaller than Greyfang had been, maybe 300 wolves total, clustered around a central longhouse. But the atmosphere was wrong. Wolves moved with nervous energy, casting fearful glances at a building on the village's edge. The quarantine house. Alpha Gareth met them at the village entrance. A massive male wolf with gray-streaked hair and eyes that held too much worry. You're the Alpha King's investigators? We are, Cade said. This is Marcus, and this is Leora. We're here to examine the affected wolves and gather information. Gareth's gaze fixed on Leora. You're young for an investigator. I'm a survivor, Leora said evenly, which makes me qualified. Something in her tone made Gareth reassess her. Fair enough. Follow me. But I warn you, the quarantine house isn't pleasant. We've had to restrain some of them. The loss of their wolves has broken them. He led them to the building Leora had noticed earlier. Inside, 15 wolves sat or lay on simple cots, all wearing the same expression of hollow despair she remembered from her own mirror. Young wolves, old wolves, male and female. The poison didn't discriminate. A young woman sat nearest the door, staring at her hands like they belonged to someone else. Leora approached slowly, kneeling beside the cot. My name is Leora. I'm here to help. The woman looked up with dead eyes. There's no help. My wolf is gone. I can feel the emptiness where she used to be. I know, Leora said softly. I felt it too. For 8 years, I felt exactly what you're feeling now. The woman's eyes sharpened slightly. You were suppressed? Poisoned. Same compound you received, probably. Leora held up her hand, let her claws extend partially. But I survived it, got purged. My wolf came back stronger than ever. She met the woman's gaze. Yours can too. But first I need to know how you were poisoned. What did you eat or drink that was unusual? Who gave it to you? The woman's brow furrowed. There was a healer. Came through about a week ago. Said he was conducting free health screenings for border packs. He gave me a tonic. Said it would strengthen my wolf, help me transform faster during threats. Leora's blood ran cold. What did he look like? Old. White hair, sharp eyes, spoke like someone educated. The woman's voice dropped. I trusted him because he wore the healer's mark, because he seemed to care. Did he say where he was going next? North, to Stonepaw territory. He said they needed screenings too. Leora stood, her mind racing. Aldrich was moving through the border territories systematically, disguised as a helpful healer, poisoning wolves under the guise of helping them. Brilliant and horrifying. She moved through the quarantine house, speaking to each victim, gathering details. They all told the same story, a traveling healer offering tonics, promising strength, leaving poison behind. Cade joined her as she finished interviewing the last victim. Same pattern? Exactly the same. He's not hiding. He's working in plain sight, using his reputation as a healer to gain access. She turned to Alpha Gareth, who'd been listening from the doorway. Have you sent word to Stonepaw Pack? Warned them? I sent a runner yesterday, Gareth said, but I haven't heard back. It's 2 days' travel north through rough terrain. We need to go now, Leora said. If Aldrich is there. He'll be long gone by the time we arrive, Marcus said practically. The man's not stupid. He knows we're investigating. He's probably already moved on. Then we follow his trail until we catch him. Leora's voice carried an edge that made even Cade glance at her sharply. Every day he operates, more wolves end up like this. Like I was. That stops. Now. Gareth studied her for a long moment. You really were suppressed, weren't you? I can see it in your eyes, the rage that comes from having your wolf stolen. Yes, Leora said, and I'm going to make sure Aldrich pays for every single wolf he's destroyed. They left Ravenclaw territory at dawn, pushing their horses hard north toward Stonepaw lands. The terrain grew rougher, rocky hills, narrow passes, dense forests that seemed to press in from all sides. Perfect country for ambush. Leora's instincts screamed warnings that she couldn't quite articulate. Something felt wrong. The forest was too quiet, the paths too clear. "Hold," Marcus said suddenly, raising his hand. They reined in their horses. He dismounted, studying the ground. Fresh tracks, multiple wolves. They crossed here within the hour. "Stonepaw Patrol?" Cade suggested. "Wrong direction. These tracks are heading south, away from Stonepaw territory." Marcus's expression darkened. "They're running from something." A scream echoed through the forest ahead, high, terrified, cut off abruptly. "Move!" Leora kicked her horse forward before Cade could stop her. She heard him cursing behind her, heard Marcus scrambling back onto his mount, but she didn't slow down. Someone was in trouble. She burst into a clearing and yanked her horse to a halt. 6 wolves surrounded a young male who'd collapsed in the center. They wore no pack markers, no identifying colors. Just dark clothing and weapons designed for killing, not ceremony. Mercenaries. The young male on the ground was clutching his throat, blood seeping between his fingers. One of the mercenaries held a vial of pale green liquid, the same shade as the poison that had destroyed Leora's life. "Well," one of the mercenaries said, turning to face her, "look what wandered into our trap. Hello, White Wolf. We've been waiting for you." Leora's blood turned to ice. They knew. Somehow, they knew she was coming. Cade and Marcus thundered into the clearing behind her, weapons already drawn. The mercenaries didn't seem concerned. If anything, they looked pleased. 3 investigators, the leader said. "Even better. Master Aldrich will be so pleased." "Where is he?" Leora demanded, sliding off her horse, her hand moving to her sword. "Close enough to watch you die." The mercenary gestured, and his companions fanned out in a practiced formation. "Did you really think you could hunt him? That you could stop what he's building?" He laughed. "You're not a hunter, little wolf. You're prey, and you just walked into the killing ground." "Now!" Cade shouted. The mercenaries attacked as one. Leora barely got her sword up in time to block the first strike. Steel rang against steel, and she remembered Cade's training. Watch the body, not the weapon. Predict, don't react. She ducked under a sweeping blade, drove her shoulder into her attacker's gut, and used his momentum to throw him off balance. Her sword found flesh, and the mercenary went down with a scream. 1 down, 5 to go. Cade fought like a demon, his blade moving too fast to follow, taking down 2 mercenaries with brutal efficiency. Marcus had shifted to wolf form, his jaws closing around a mercenary's leg, tearing through muscle and tendon. But the leader was advancing on Leora, that vial of poison still in his hand. "Master Aldrich wanted us to bring you back alive. But I think I'll give you a dose of his medicine first. See how the mighty White Wolf handles suppression a second time." He lunged. Leora dodged, but not quite fast enough. His hand caught her arm, and she felt the vial's glass break against her skin. The pale green liquid soaked into her sleeve, burning like acid. No, not again. Terror lanced through her. She could already feel it, that horrible emptiness starting to creep through her veins. The poison worked faster this time, Senna had said. More aggressive. The mercenary smiled. "There we go. In about 10 minutes, you'll be—" Leora shifted. The transformation hit like an explosion. Her wolf erupted from her skin with such force that it threw the mercenary backward. She didn't think, didn't plan, just let rage and terror fuel the change. Her massive white wolf form dominated the clearing. She caught the mercenary before he could recover, her jaws closing around his sword arm. Bone crunched. He screamed. She released him and lunged for the leader, who was scrambling for another vial. Her paw struck his chest like a battering ram, sending him flying into a tree. He hit hard and didn't get up. The remaining 2 mercenaries broke and ran. Marcus brought one down within 50 feet. The other made it to the tree line before Cade's thrown knife found his spine. Silence crashed over the clearing. Leora stood over the unconscious leader, her white fur splattered with blood, her chest heaving. She could feel the poison in her system, could feel it trying to reach her wolf, trying to smother the power she'd only just reclaimed. But something was different. Her wolf wasn't submitting to the suppression. It was fighting back. "Leora!" Cade rushed to her side. "Shift back. Let us check the wound." She forced the transformation, collapsing into human form. Her arm burned where the poison had touched her skin. Cade ripped the sleeve away, revealing blistered flesh and veins that had turned dark green. "Damn it!" he breathed. Marcus, get the medical kit. Now! But Leora grabbed his hand. Wait. Watch. As they stared, the dark veins began to recede. Her wolf's power was burning through the poison, purging it faster than it could take hold. The blisters faded. The burning eased. Within minutes, her arm was clear. Impossible, Marcus whispered, medical kit forgotten in his hands. The poison should have taken hold by now. Should have started suppressing your transformation. My wolf is stronger now, Leora said, staring at her unmarked arm in wonder. The purge didn't just restore my power, it made me resistant. The poison can't touch me anymore. Cade sat back on his heels, his expression stunned. That's why they wanted to capture you specifically. Aldrich must have realized that if you survive suppression once, you could help other victims survive it too. You're a threat to his entire operation. Good. Leora stood, swaying slightly but steady. Let's make sure he knows exactly how much of a threat I am. She moved to the unconscious leader, grabbing him by his collar and shaking him roughly. Wake up! The mercenary's eyes fluttered open. Blood ran from his nose and his arm hung at an unnatural angle. Where's Aldrich? Leora demanded. Go to hell. She let her claws extend, pressing them against his throat. I survived 8 years of his poison. Survived the purge. Just survived another dose that should have destroyed me. Do you really think I'll hesitate to cut your throat? Fear flickered in his eyes. He'll kill me if I talk. I'll kill you if you don't. She pressed harder, drawing blood. Choose. North, he gasped. Abandoned mine complex 3 days north of Stonepaw territory. He's set up a laboratory there. He's preparing a mass distribution, planning to poison entire territories simultaneously. Leora's blood ran cold. How many territories? All of them. Every border pack from here to the western coast. The mercenary's voice dropped to a whisper. He's going to suppress thousands of wolves, create a whole generation of empty ones. Says it's necessary. Says it's evolution. It's genocide, Chow, Marcus said flatly. Leora released the mercenary, her mind racing. 3 days north, a laboratory, mass distribution. They needed to send word to Theron immediately, needed to mobilize forces, needed to... Behind you! Cade's shout came too late. Pain exploded across Leora's skull as something heavy struck her from behind. She collapsed, her vision swimming. Through the haze, she saw more mercenaries emerging from the forest, at least a dozen, weapons drawn. They'd been set up. The whole thing had been a trap. Secure them, a cold voice commanded. An elderly male stepped into the clearing, white-haired and sharp-eyed. Master Healer Aldrich himself. Especially the White Wolf. I have plans for her. Leora tried to move, tried to shift, but her body wouldn't respond. The blow to her head had done something, scrambled her connection to her wolf. She felt Cade and Marcus being dragged away, heard them fighting and cursing, felt hands grabbing her arms, binding them with chains. Aldrich knelt beside her, studying her face with clinical interest. Fascinating. You purged the poison completely, even developed resistance to secondary exposure. He touched her arm where the mercenary's vial had broken. I've been studying suppression for 30 years, and I've never seen a recovery like yours. You're insane, Leora managed through the pain. No, my dear. I'm visionary. He stood, gesturing to his mercenaries. Bring her to the laboratory, alive and unharmed. I need to study her resistance. Perhaps her blood holds the key to making my formula permanent. He smiled coldly. How poetic. The wolf who survived suppression will help me perfect it. They dragged her to her feet. Leora fought against the chains, but her body still wouldn't cooperate. She watched helplessly as they secured Cade and Marcus as well, both of them injured and restrained. They'd failed, walked right into Aldrich's trap, and now they were prisoners. The mercenaries forced them to march north, deeper into the wilderness. Leora's head cleared slowly as they walked, her connection to her wolf gradually returning. But the chains were specially made, silver-laced, designed to burn wolf flesh and prevent transformation. They walked for hours until they reached a rocky hillside riddled with cave entrances, the abandoned mine complex. Torches blazed from several openings, and more mercenaries stood guard. Aldrich had built an army here, a fortress. They were dragged into the largest cave entrance, down tunnels that opened into a vast underground chamber. The space had been converted into a laboratory, tables covered with vials and equipment, Cages holding wolves in various states of suppression, and in the center, a massive cauldron bubbling with pale green liquid. "Welcome to my sanctuary," Aldrich said. "This is where I'm going to change the wolf world forever, where I'm going to cure us of our greatest weakness, allowing inferior bloodlines to dilute our power." "You're creating victims," Leora spat, "not curing anything." "I'm creating clarity." Aldrich moved to one of the cages, where a young wolf sat hollow-eyed and broken. "Look at him. Weak bloodline, minimal power, barely able to maintain transformation. He was a burden to his pack, consuming resources while contributing nothing." He turned back to Leora. "Now he's simply what he always was. Human, honest, no longer pretending to be something he wasn't strong enough to be." "You don't get to decide that," Leora said. "You don't get to choose who deserves their wolf and who doesn't." "Someone has to." Aldrich's expression hardened. "The packs have been weakening for generations, accepting anyone, breeding indiscriminately, allowing power to be diluted until we're barely stronger than humans. I'm correcting that mistake. By poisoning innocent wolves. By removing the weak before they weaken us all." He gestured to his mercenaries. "Secure them in the holding cells. I'll begin studying the white wolf tomorrow. For now, let them consider the futility of their position." They were dragged to smaller chambers carved into the rock, prison cells with bars made of silver. Leora was separated from Cade and Marcus, thrown into a cell barely large enough to stand in. The silver door clanged shut. Aldrich appeared outside, studying her through the bars. "You hate me," he observed. "I can see it in your eyes. You think I'm a monster." "You are a monster." "No, I'm what's necessary." He leaned closer. "Your stepmother understood that. When I provided her with the formula to suppress you, she knew she was protecting her daughter's future, ensuring the stronger bloodline would prevail." Leora's breath caught. You gave Celeste the poison?" "Of course. She came to me when you were 10, worried that you might prove stronger than her daughter, that your mother's bloodline might overshadow hers." He smiled. "I helped her, just like I'm helping dozens of packs now." The revelation hit like a physical blow. Celeste hadn't created the poison herself. Aldrich had been pulling the strings all along, had been testing his formula on Leora for 8 years before moving on to mass distribution. She'd been his first victim, his proof of concept. "You destroyed my life," she whispered. "No, child. I showed you the truth of what you are. Weak bloodline, barely worth preserving." His eyes glinted. "Though I admit your resistance is unexpected. Your white wolf emergence even more so. Perhaps I was wrong about you specifically." He straightened. "But that makes you even more valuable. Your blood could be the final piece I need to make my formula permanent, irreversible." He walked away, leaving Leora alone in the silver cage with the weight of revelation crushing her chest. Everything, her entire life of suffering, had been part of Aldrich's research. He'd turned her into an experiment, and now he was going to use what he learned from her to destroy thousands more. She pulled against her chains, ignoring the burn of silver against her skin. Her wolf snarled inside her chest, furious and ready to fight. But the cell was designed perfectly. Escape was impossible. From the next cell, she heard Cade's voice. "Leora? You still conscious?" "Barely." "Good. Listen to me. We're getting out of here." "How? We're locked in silver cells. They have an army. And Aldrich is planning to study me like a laboratory animal." "Yeah, the situation's pretty bad," Cade admitted. "But Marcus and I have been in worse. And you're a white wolf. You're stronger than these chains. You just need to believe it." "Believing doesn't break silver." "No, but rage does." His voice lowered. "You heard what Aldrich said. He gave your stepmother the poison. He's the reason you lost 8 years of your life. He's planning to do the same thing to thousands more wolves." Pause. "Are you really going to let him win?" Leora closed her eyes, feeling the rage build in her chest. Cade was right. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about stopping a monster who'd been operating in the shadows for decades. She thought about the young woman in Ravenclaw's quarantine house, about the broken wolves in Aldrich's cages, about every victim past and future. And she thought about the white wolf inside her, the power that had survived 8 years of poison, that had fought its way back from the edge of extinction. That wolf had refused to die, refused to be erased. Time to remind Aldrich of that. Leora opened her eyes and began to pull against the chains with everything she had. The silver burned, seared her flesh, but she didn't stop. Her wolf power surged, fighting against the suppression. In the next cell, she heard Marcus's voice join Cade's. "That's it. Don't stop. Your wolf is stronger than his chains." The silver lynx began to groan. Leora pulled harder, her muscles screaming, her skin blistering, but she felt the metal starting to give, felt the power inside her building to a breaking point. "Come on," Cade shouted. With a sound like thunder, the chain snapped. Leora stumbled forward, free but injured. Her wrists were raw and bleeding where the silver had burned through, but she was loose. She grabbed the cell bars and pulled. They were solid silver, designed to hold even alpha-class wolves. But she was White Wolf. She was stronger than they'd planned for. The bars bent. Slowly, agonizingly, they began to warp under her grip. "Impossible," a guard's voice came from down the corridor. "Alert Master Aldrich! The White Wolf is breaking free!" Leora didn't stop, couldn't stop. The bars screeched in protest as she forced them apart, creating a gap just wide enough to squeeze through. She emerged into the corridor as guards rushed toward her. 6 of them, weapons drawn, fear in their eyes. They should be afraid. Leora shifted. Her white wolf form erupted in the confined space, larger than before, fueled by rage and determination. She met the first guard's charge head-on, her jaws closing around his sword arm. Bone shattered. She released him and turned on the next. They tried to fight her, tried to bring her down with numbers and silver weapons. But Leora had spent 8 years being weak, being nothing, being empty. She was done with that. She tore through the guards like they were paper, her power unstoppable in the narrow corridor. Within minutes, all 6 were down, alive, but broken. She shifted back to human form, grabbed keys from one of the fallen guards, and rushed to free Cade and Marcus. "Holy hell," Cade said as she unlocked his cell. "You really are a monster." "I learned from the best," Leora said grimly. She freed Marcus next, then pointed down the corridor. "Aldrich's laboratory is that way. We need to destroy his operation before reinforcements arrive." "We're outnumbered at least 10 to 1, Marcus pointed out. "Then we'd better move fast." Leora picked up a fallen guard's sword. "You two free the prisoners in the cages. I'll handle Aldrich." "Leoracia," Cade started. "That's not a request." She met his eyes. "He created the poison that destroyed my life. He's planning to destroy thousands more. This ends tonight, with me." Cade studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Don't die." "Not planning on it." She ran down the corridor toward the main laboratory, her bare feet silent on stone. Behind her, she heard Cade and Marcus breaking open cage doors, heard the confused sounds of freed prisoners. Ahead, she heard Aldrich's voice shouting orders. Leora burst into the laboratory to find the elderly healer surrounded by a dozen armed mercenaries. He looked at her with more curiosity than fear. "Remarkable. You broke silver restraints. I really must study your cellular structure. The resistance you've developed is unprecedented." "The only thing you're going to study is the inside of a prison cell," Leora said. "I think not." Aldrich gestured, and his mercenaries advanced. "Kill her! She's too dangerous to capture now." They attacked as one. Leora shifted mid-stride, her white wolf form crashing into their formation like an avalanche. She was faster than before, stronger than before. Every transformation made her more in control, more powerful. She was learning what it meant to be a white wolf. And it was terrifying. She fought with everything she'd learned from Cade's brutal training. Used her size to overwhelm them, used her speed to avoid their weapons, used her rage to fuel strikes that left mercenaries broken and bleeding. One by one, they fell. Until only Aldrich remained, backed against his laboratory table, holding a vial of poison like a weapon. "Stay back," he shouted. "This is concentrated enough to suppress even you. One splash and your wolf is gone forever." Leora shifted to human form, standing naked and blood-covered in the wreckage of his laboratory. "Do it then. See what happens." Aldrich's hand shook. "You're bluffing. You're terrified of losing your wolf again. I can see it in your eyes." "You're right. I am terrified." Leora took a step forward. but I'm more afraid of letting you continue, of letting you create more victims. So go ahead, try to suppress me. And when it doesn't work because my wolf is stronger than your poison now, I'll tear your throat out." She took another step. Aldrich threw the vial. The concentrated poison splashed across Leora's chest, burning like acid. She gasped, felt it trying to reach her wolf, trying to smother the power, and watched as her body burned it away. The poison smoked on her skin, neutralized before it could penetrate. Her wolf's resistance had evolved beyond anything Aldrich could have predicted. His face went white. "Impossible! The concentration should have—" Leora shifted one final time and lunged. Aldrich screamed as her jaws closed around his arm, not killing him, just holding him, capturing him like the specimen he'd tried to make her. Cade and Marcus burst into the laboratory with a dozen freed prisoners behind them. They stopped at the site. Leora in wolf form, holding the legendary healer at her mercy, surrounded by unconscious mercenaries. "Well," Marcus said finally, "I guess she didn't need our help after all." Leora released Aldrich and shifted back. The elderly healer collapsed, clutching his injured arm, staring at her with shock and grudging respect. "You've won," he said quietly, "but you realize what this means. You've just proven my theory. Strong bloodlines survive. Weak ones fall. You survived because you were strong enough to adapt, to evolve." He laughed bitterly. "You're the perfect example of what I was trying to achieve." "No," Leora said. "I survived because I refused to let you or anyone else decide my worth. Because I fought back even when I had no power. Because I was stubborn and angry and desperate." She knelt beside him. "Strength isn't about bloodlines. It's about choice. And every wolf you poisoned deserved the chance to make that choice themselves." She turned to Cade. "Secure him. We're bringing him back to Shadowkeep for trial." Over the next hour, they rounded up the remaining mercenaries, freed all the prisoners, and destroyed Aldrich's laboratory, including the massive cauldron of poison that would have destroyed entire territories. Leora stood in the ruins and felt something shift inside her. She'd come here as an investigator, barely trained, still figuring out what being a white wolf meant. She was leaving as something else entirely, a hunter who'd caught her prey, a warrior who'd proven herself in battle, a force that even legends feared. As dawn broke over the mine complex, Cade approached her. "The Alpha King needs to hear about this immediately. We'll send riders ahead, but—" He paused. "You should know that when we get back, everything changes. You just brought down the wolf who's been terrorizing territories for decades. Proved that suppression poison can be overcome. Saved thousands of potential victims. So? So you're not going to be the unknown white wolf anymore. You're going to be famous, celebrated." He smiled slightly. "Or feared, depending on who's telling the story." Leora looked at the freed prisoners, wolves who were already regaining their strength, their hope. Looked at Aldrich in chains, the monster who'd destroyed so many lives finally captured. "I don't care about being famous," she said. "I care about making sure this never happens again. That no other wolf has to spend 8 years feeling empty because someone decided they weren't worth their power. Then you're going to need authority to make those changes. Resources. Support." Cade's expression grew serious. "The Alpha King doesn't hand out that kind of power lightly. Whatever debt he calls in, it's going to be big." "I know." Leora touched the scars on her wrists where the silver chains had burned. "But I'll pay it. Whatever it takes." They began the journey back to Shadowkeep, a caravan of freed prisoners, captured criminals, and 3 investigators who'd accomplished the impossible. And in the center of it all, a white wolf who'd finally discovered what she was meant to be. Not a victim, not even a survivor. A protector, a warrior, a force that would reshape the wolf world whether it was ready or not. The girl they'd tried to erase had become someone impossible to ignore, and she was just getting started. The journey back to Shadowkeep took 6 days instead of the usual 4. They moved slowly, carefully, protecting the freed prisoners who were still weak from suppression, guarding Aldrich and his captured mercenaries who rode in chains. Word of their success spread ahead of them like wildfire, runners carrying news from territory to territory, each pack sending representatives to see the legendary healer brought to justice. By the time they reached the capital's gates, thousands had gathered. Leora rode at the front of the caravan beside Cade and Marcus, her white wolf form visible to everyone who'd come to witness. She'd stayed transformed for most of the journey, unwilling to show vulnerability even as exhaustion dragged at her bones. The freed prisoners needed to see strength, needed to believe recovery was possible. The crowd parted as they entered Shadowkeep, wolves lining the streets in absolute silence. Leora caught fragments of whispered words as they passed. White Wolf who brought him down. Survived suppression twice. Single-handedly destroyed his entire operation. The stories were already growing beyond truth, but Leora didn't correct them. Let them believe she was invincible. Let them believe suppression could be overcome, whatever gave the victims hope. Theron waited at the palace steps, flanked by the entire High Council. His expression was unreadable as Leora shifted to human form, one of his guards immediately stepping forward with a cloak to cover her. She accepted it with a nod, then met the Alpha King's dark eyes. "Master Healer Aldrich," she said formally, "captured and ready for judgment, along with evidence of his crimes, testimony from 37 victims, and the complete destruction of his laboratory." "So I've heard." Theron descended the steps slowly, his gaze moving from Leora to the prisoners to the freed wolves. "The reports claim you single-handedly took down a fortified position defended by 20 armed mercenaries. Cade and Marcus helped." "Actually," Cade said, dismounting, "she handled the main assault herself. We just cleaned up and freed prisoners." The council members exchanged glances. The bearded elder who'd questioned Leora weeks ago stepped forward. "This is unprecedented. A newly awakened wolf accomplishing what would challenge even seasoned warriors." His eyes narrowed. "Some might wonder if the reports are exaggerated." "They're not," Marcus said flatly. "I watched her break silver restraints through sheer force, watched her fight off an entire squad while resisting concentrated suppression poison. She's exactly as dangerous as the reports claim." "Dangerous," the sharp-featured counselor repeated. "That's what concerns us." Leora felt the shift in the crowd's energy. This was the moment, the council deciding whether she was a hero or a threat, whether her power would be celebrated or contained. Theron raised his hand for silence. "This discussion will continue in the council chamber. For now," he turned to the guards, "take Aldrich to the dungeons, maximum security. He faces trial at dawn." His gaze found the freed prisoners. "The rest of you, to the healing house. Senna and her staff are prepared to begin treatment." The crowd began to move, but Theron's voice stopped Leora. "Not you. You're coming with me." He turned and walked into the palace. Leora followed, feeling every eye on her back, aware that this moment would determine everything that came next. Theron led her not to the war room or council chamber, but to a private study she'd never seen before. Smaller, more personal, with windows overlooking the city and shelves lined with books and maps. He closed the door behind them. "Sit." Leora sat, suddenly aware of how exhausted she was, how much the past week had taken from her. Theron poured 2 glasses of dark liquid from a crystal decanter and handed her one. "Drink. You look like you're about to collapse." She took the glass, sipped cautiously. Some kind of fortified wine that burned going down but warmed her from the inside. "What happens now?" "Now you face the consequences of your success." Theron leaned against his desk, studying her. "The council is terrified. They were willing to tolerate a white wolf under my supervision, doing investigative work, being useful but controlled. What they're not prepared for is a white wolf who can take down fortified positions, resist suppression poison, and inspire that kind of loyalty." He gestured toward the window, where crowds still gathered in the streets. "You've become a symbol, Leora, and symbols are dangerous." "I didn't ask to be a symbol. No one ever does. But here we are." He took a long drink from his glass. "The council will demand I lock you up. They'll cite Morgana, the last white wolf who tried to seize power. They'll argue that your resistance to suppression makes you too dangerous to leave free." Leora's stomach clenched. "And what will you tell them?" "That depends on you." Theron set down his glass. "I told you that you owed me a debt, that when I called it in, you would pay without question. Do you remember?" "Yes." "Good. Because I'm calling it in now." He moved to stand directly in front of her. "The council fears you. The packs are starting to see you as someone who could challenge the existing power structure. In 6 months, maybe a year, someone will try to use you as a figurehead for rebellion.
And then I'll have to put you down like I did Morgana.
Unless what? Unless you become mine in a way that can't be challenged or questioned. His eyes locked onto hers. I want you as my Luna, my mate, my equal partner in ruling these territories. The words hung in the air like lightning before a storm. Leora stared at him, certain she'd misheard. You want me to mate with you? That's the debt? Yes, a political alliance that makes your power an extension of mine, that transforms you from a potential threat into an asset that strengthens my rule. He paused. The council can't argue against an alpha king choosing his Luna, and with you at my side, we can reshape the entire system, rewrite laws that allow suppression, create protections for wolves like those Aldrich victimized, actually change things instead of just surviving them. Leora's mind spun. A week ago, she'd been barely trained, still learning what being a white wolf meant. Now the Alpha King was offering her the highest position in the wolf kingdom, not out of love, but out of political necessity. You don't love me, she said carefully. No. And you don't love me. Theron's honesty was almost brutal. But we respect each other, we understand each other, and we both want the same thing, a wolf world that's stronger, fairer, where power isn't abused by those who hold it. He leaned closer. I'm not offering you romance, Leora. I'm offering you partnership, authority. The ability to ensure what happened to you never happens to anyone else. And if I say no, then I'll protect you as long as I can. But eventually, the council will force my hand. They'll manufacture evidence, create threats, do whatever it takes to justify eliminating you. His expression was grim. I'm powerful, but even I can't defy the entire council indefinitely. This is your best chance at survival, and theirs. He gestured towards the window again, toward the freed prisoners being led to the healing house. As Luna, you'll have the authority to reform the Healers Guild, to investigate suppression cases, to punish those who abuse their power. Refuse, and you're just another dangerous wolf who needs to be contained. Leora stood, moving to the window, looking out at the city that had become her home. She thought about the girl she'd been a month ago, broken, poisoned, invisible. That girl would have been terrified of this offer, would have seen it as another trap, another way to be used, but that girl was gone. If I accept, she said slowly, I want conditions. Name them. The freed prisoners get full treatment and support. No pack can reject them for having been suppressed. They get a chance to rebuild their lives. Agreed. Second, I want authority to investigate any suspected suppression cases, to reform the Healers Guild and implement safeguards. No more Aldrichs operating in the shadows. You'll have it. Third, she turned to face him. This is a partnership, not ownership. You don't get to control me or make decisions about my life without my input. We're equals, or this doesn't work. Theron studied her for a long moment, then smiled, genuine, almost warm. You really have changed. The girl from the ceremony never would have made demands. That girl died in the purge. You're negotiating with what survived. Good, because what survived is exactly who I need. He held out his hand. Do we have an agreement? Leora looked at his offered hand, understanding the weight of what she was accepting. This wasn't a fairy tale, wasn't love conquering all. This was cold political calculation dressed up as destiny. But it was also real power, real authority to change the system that had destroyed her. She took his hand. We have an agreement. His grip was firm, warm, and the moment their hands connected, something shifted in the air between them. Not romantic, not yet, but recognition. Two predators choosing to hunt together instead of against each other. The council meets in an hour, Theron said. I'll announce our bonding there. They won't like it, but they can't refuse it. By tomorrow, you'll be Luna of all the northern territories. He released her hand. Think you're ready for that? No, Leora admitted. But I wasn't ready to be a white wolf either. Didn't stop me. He laughed. Fair point. Get cleaned up. Find something appropriate to wear. When you walk into that council chamber, you need to look like a Luna, not a warrior who's been living rough for a week. Can I be both? With you, I suspect there's no choice. He moved toward the door, then paused. Leora, thank you.
for saying yes, for understanding what this is and choosing it anyway. Thank you for giving me a choice at all.
He left, and Leora sank into the chair, her hands shaking now that she was alone. She'd just agreed to mate with the Alpha King, to become Luna, to take on responsibility for thousands of wolves she barely knew. She should be terrified. Instead, she felt focused, clear, like every piece of her shattered life had finally fallen into a pattern she could use. A servant appeared at the door, the same kind-eyed woman who'd escorted her to the council weeks ago. "My lady, I've been sent to help you prepare. If you'll follow me?" Leora followed her through the palace to chambers far grander than the ones she'd been occupying. The Luna's suite, apparently kept ready for whenever Theron chose a mate. The servant led her to a bathing room where hot water already steamed in an enormous marble tub. "Take your time, my lady. I'll prepare your clothes." Leora sank into the water and let the heat ease muscles that had been screaming for days. She closed her eyes and thought about everything that had brought her here. Celeste's poison, the ceremony, the purge, the awakening, Aldrich's capture. And now this, a political mating that would reshape her entire existence. She should feel manipulated, used, like she'd traded one form of control for another, but she didn't, because this time she'd chosen. She'd negotiated. She'd made demands and had them accepted. This time she was walking into the cage with the key in her hand. She emerged from the bath to find the servant had laid out a gown. Deep midnight blue silk embroidered with silver thread that caught the light like stars. Luna colors. A crown of silver and moonstones rested on a velvet cushion beside it. "The Alpha King's mother wore this at her bonding ceremony," the servant said quietly. "He wanted you to have it." Leora touched the fabric, feeling the history in it, the weight of expectation, the mantle of power she was about to assume. She put it on. The gown fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her specifically. The crown settled on her head with surprising lightness. She studied herself in the mirror and barely recognized what she saw. Not the empty girl from Greyfang, not even the white wolf who'd destroyed Aldrich's operation. Someone new. Someone who could stand beside an Alpha King and not flinch. "You look like a Luna, my lady," the servant said with genuine warmth. "I look terrified," Leora corrected. "That too. But sometimes the best leaders are the ones who are afraid and lead anyway." A knock at the door. Theron entered, now wearing formal ceremonial clothes, black leather and silver chains, a crown of dark metal on his head. He stopped when he saw her. "I chose well," he said finally. "You haven't even seen me rule yet. I saw you face down Aldrich, survive suppression twice, negotiate terms with an Alpha King." He offered his arm. "You'll do fine." She took his arm, and together they walked through the palace toward the council chamber. Wolves lined the corridors, bowing as they passed. Word had already spread somehow, whispers of the announcement to come. The council chamber doors opened, every head turned as they entered. Theron led her to the center of the room, to the space where she'd stood weeks ago as a confused girl who'd just exposed her family's crimes. The council members sat in their high seats, expressions ranging from shock to calculation to barely concealed anger. "Counselors," Theron said, his voice carrying absolute authority, "I've called this emergency session to make an announcement. As of this moment, I am claiming Leora Vance as my Luna and mate. The bonding ceremony will take place tomorrow at dawn." The chamber erupted. "You can't be serious. She's barely been a wolf for a month. This is unprecedented. This is madness." The bearded elder raised his hand for silence. "Alpha King, we understand that the White Wolf has proven herself capable, but to elevate her to Luna without proper courtship, without allowing the council to review—" "The council doesn't review my choice of mate," Theron cut him off coldly. "That is my right as Alpha King, and I've chosen." "A white wolf is Luna," the sharp-featured woman said. "Do you understand what message that sends? The last white wolf we allowed to accumulate power nearly destroyed the council system. Morgana." "Morgana was nothing like Leora," Theron said, "and I'm tired of hearing that comparison. Leora has spent the last month proving herself, captured Aldrich, destroyed a suppression network, freed dozens of victims. She's earned her position through action, not bloodline." She's earned the right to be respected," another counselor argued. "Not to rule beside you. The two are not the same." Leora felt Theron tense beside her, ready to argue further. But she'd spent weeks watching council politics, learning how power moved through these chambers. She stepped forward. "May I speak?" The room went silent, every eye fixed on her. "You're afraid of me," Leora said simply. "I understand that. I'm a white wolf. I'm new. I'm unpredictable. And yes, I've shown I can be dangerous when necessary." She met each counselor's eyes in turn. "But I'm also the wolf who survived 8 years of suppression and came back stronger, who understands what it's like to be powerless, who knows exactly what happens when those with authority abuse it." She moved to the center of the circle, forcing them to look at her directly. "You're right that I haven't been a wolf for long, but I've been a victim of your broken system my entire life. I know where the cracks are, where predators like Aldrich hide, where wolves slip through because no one with power cared enough to look." Her voice strengthened. "As Luna, I won't just stand beside the Alpha King. I'll make sure those cracks get filled, make sure victims get protected, make sure no other wolf spends 8 years being poisoned while healers and pack leaders look the other way." "Pretty words," the bearded elder said, "but words are easy. How do we know you won't abuse your position the way Morgana did?" "You don't," Leora said honestly. "You'll have to trust the Alpha King's judgment and watch me prove myself every single day." She paused. "But ask yourselves this. Who better to reform a broken system than someone who's survived it? Who better to protect the powerless than someone who remembers what powerlessness feels like?" Silence filled the chamber. The bearded elder leaned back in his chair, studying her with new eyes. "You make a compelling argument, girl. But the council exists to prevent exactly this kind of concentrated power. An Alpha King is one thing. An Alpha King mated to a white wolf is quite another." "Then create oversight," Leora said. "Establish review processes for my reforms. Require me to report to you quarterly. Build in safeguards." She smiled slightly. "I'm not asking for unchecked authority. I'm asking for the chance to help fix what's broken." The counselors exchanged glances. She'd given them something they hadn't expected, the appearance of control, the illusion that they were still managing the situation. The sharp-featured woman spoke up. "If we agree to this bonding, and I'm not saying we are, we would require regular reports, transparency in your reforms, and the right to revoke your authority if we determine you're abusing it." "Agreed," Leora said immediately. Theron shot her a glance that promised they'd discuss her concessions later, but she ignored it. This was about survival, about getting what she needed by giving them what they thought they wanted. The bearded elder stood. "Very well. The council will vote. All in favor of accepting Leora Vance as Luna?" Slowly, hands began to rise. Not all of them. 3 counselors kept their arms firmly down, their expressions hostile. But 8 hands rose, including the elders. "The motion passes," he said. "The bonding ceremony is approved." He looked at Leora with something that might have been respect. "Don't make us regret this, girl." "I'll do my best." The session concluded, and Theron led her from the chamber. Once they were in the corridor, he spoke quietly. "You gave up authority we didn't have to concede. Quarterly reports, oversight, the right to revoke. I gave them the illusion of control," Leora corrected. "They'll feel better thinking they're managing me. And when I actually succeed at reforms, they'll take partial credit. Everyone wins." Theron stared at her, then laughed. "You're going to be terrifying as Luna." "That's the idea." They walked through the palace to the balcony overlooking the main courtyard. Below, thousands of wolves had gathered. Word of the bonding had spread through the city like lightning. Theron stepped forward, raising his hand for silence. "People of Shadowkeep, tomorrow at dawn, I will bond with Leora Vance, your new Luna, the white wolf who brought down Aldrich, who survived suppression, who fights for those without power." His voice carried across the courtyard. "A new era begins, one where strength isn't measured only in bloodline, where victims become protectors, where the broken become unbreakable." The crowd erupted in cheers. Not universal. Leora could see skeptical faces, angry faces, fearful faces. But enough. Enough wolves who saw hope in her story, who wanted to believe the system could change. She stepped forward to stand beside Theron, and the cheers grew louder. "Wave," he said quietly. "They want to see their Luna." Leora raised her hand and the crowd roared. She looked out at thousands of faces, all looking to her for something. Hope, protection, change. She'd asked for this. negotiated for this, chosen this path. Now she had to live up to it. The bonding ceremony took place the next morning as promised. Dawnlight streamed through the ancient temple windows as Theron and Leora stood before the high priest, surrounded by the council, by pack alphas from across the territories, by freed prisoners who'd been strong enough to attend. The ceremony was beautiful and formal and felt surreal. Leora spoke vows written centuries ago, promising loyalty and partnership. Theron did the same, his dark eyes never leaving hers. When the priest blessed their union and declared them bonded, Theron kissed her. It was performative, political, but underneath, Leora felt something real, a connection forming. Not love, not yet, but recognition, partnership. Two damaged wolves choosing to be stronger together than apart. The crowd celebrated. Music played. Food was served. Leora moved through it all in a daze, accepting congratulations from wolves she'd never met, making promises she wasn't sure she could keep. Later, when the celebrations finally quieted, she found herself alone on the palace ramparts, staring out at the city that was now partly hers to protect. "Heavy as the crown?" Senna's voice came from behind her. Leora turned to find the healer approaching, a knowing smile on her face. "Something like that." "For what it's worth, I think you made the right choice." Senna joined her at the wall. "Theron is smart enough to use your power wisely, and you're stubborn enough to keep him honest." "I hope so." Leora touched the crown on her head, lighter than it looked, but the weight she felt had nothing to do with metal. "Did you finish treating the prisoners we brought back?" "Most of them. The purge is working, though it's brutal, but they're surviving because you showed them it was possible." Senna's expression grew serious. "Aldrich's trial is tomorrow. They're expecting you to attend, to testify." "I'll be there." "And after? What's your first act as Luna?" Leora had been thinking about that question since accepting Theron's offer. She had so many ideas, reforms, safeguards, changes that could prevent future Aldrichs. But one thing kept rising to the top. "I want to create a sanctuary, a place where suppressed wolves can go for treatment and protection, where they're not hidden away like shameful secrets, but supported as victims who deserve healing." She looked at Senna. "Would you help me design it?" The healer's eyes widened. "A sanctuary? That would require resources, staff, council approval." "I'm Luna now. I'll get the resources. The council already agreed to let me implement reforms." Leora's voice grew stronger. "No more wolves suffering alone because their packs are ashamed. No more victims like me spending years wondering if they're really just broken. We're going to change how suppression is treated, starting now." Senna smiled, genuine and warm. "Yes, I'll help. It would be an honor." They stood together in silence, watching the sun fully rise over Shadowkeep. Leora thought about how much had changed in a month, how far she'd come from the girl who'd drunk poison every morning without knowing. That girl had been erased, destroyed in the purge and the pain and the transformation. But what had emerged was so much stronger. Aldrich's trial took place in the same council chamber where Leora had been questioned. But now she sat in the Luna's chair beside Theron's throne, wearing her crown, watching as the monster who'd destroyed her childhood was paraded before the assembly in chains. He looked smaller than she remembered. Older, broken. The charges were read. 37 counts of suppression poisoning, conspiracy to commit genocide, murder of at least 15 wolves who'd died from complications during suppression, treason against the council itself. Aldrich listened without expression until they called Leora to testify. She stood, moved to the witness circle, and met his eyes. "You were my first victim," she said quietly. 8 years old when Celeste came to you, asking for a way to suppress her stepdaughter. You gave her the poison gladly, didn't you? "I provided a solution to a bloodline problem," Aldrich said, his voice still carrying that academic tone. "Your mother's genetics were too strong, would have overshadowed your stepsister's inheritance. I helped maintain proper hierarchy. You destroyed a child's life to satisfy your theories. I conducted research, used willing participants. I wasn't willing," Leora's voice cracked like thunder. "I was 8 years old. I trusted my stepmother. I drank that poison for 8 years without knowing what it was doing to me, without having any choice." She took a step toward him. "And then you used what you learned from me to refine your formula, to poison dozens more wolves, to plan mass suppression of entire territories,
all in the name of your twisted idea of genetic purity. I was trying to save us, Aldrich said, his composure cracking. The wolf packs have been weakening for generations. Inferior bloodlines breeding without oversight, diluting our powers. Inferior bloodlines like mine? Leora let her power flare, let her eyes glow white.
I survived your poison twice, developed resistance, became strong enough to tear down your entire operation. She smiled coldly. Tell me again about inferior bloodlines. Aldrich had no answer. The council deliberated for less than an hour before returning with their verdict, guilty on all counts. The sentence, permanent exile to the most remote territory, stripped of his healer's marks, forbidden from ever practicing medicine or conducting research again. Not death, but isolation, being cut off from everything he valued. Leora watched as they led him away and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no closure, just the knowledge that he couldn't hurt anyone else. Is it wrong that I feel empty? She asked Theron later when they were alone in the Luna's chambers that were now hers. You wanted revenge to feel better than it does, he said. That's normal. Justice isn't satisfying the way we imagine it should be. Then what is? He gestured to the stack of papers on her desk, petitions from suppressed wolves asking for help, proposals for the sanctuary, requests for her to visit territories and inspect healing practices. That, making sure it never happens again, that's the only revenge that matters. Leora picked up the first petition, reading about a young wolf in the Western Territories showing signs of suppression. Already, her network was forming, wolves trusting her enough to ask for help. Then let's get to work. The months that followed were brutal and exhausting and more fulfilling than anything Leora had ever experienced. She traveled to every territory, inspecting healing practices, interviewing suspected victims, building the network that would become her early warning system against suppression. The sanctuary opened 3 months after the bonding, a beautiful complex near Shadowkeep where suppressed wolves could receive treatment in safety and dignity. Senna ran it with fierce dedication, and within weeks, it was full. Leora rewrote Healing Guild regulations, created oversight boards, implemented safeguards that made it nearly impossible for another Aldrich to operate in secret. The council fought her on some points, supported her on others, but slowly, grudgingly, the system began to change. And through it all, her relationship with Theron evolved. They worked side by side, debating policy, arguing strategy, slowly learning to trust each other beyond the political alliance that had brought them together. 6 months after the bonding, Leora stood in the sanctuary's main hall, watching freed wolves celebrate their first successful transformations after treatment. Their joy was pure and overwhelming, and she felt tears streaming down her face without shame. Theron found her there, joining her at the window overlooking the celebration. You did this, he said quietly. We did this. No, this was you, your vision, your stubborn refusal to let the system stay broken. He touched her shoulder gently. I'm proud of you, Luna. She turned to face him and realized with sudden clarity that what she felt for him had shifted, grown beyond partnership into something warmer, something that might actually be love, given time. Thank you, she said, for giving me the chance to make a difference, for seeing what I could be when I couldn't see it myself. You always had it in you. You just needed someone to get out of your way and let you shine, he smiled. Though I'll admit, you shine a lot brighter than I expected. Sometimes I wonder if I should be worried. Probably, Leora agreed. I'm just getting started. She looked back at the celebration, at wolves who'd been broken finding their strength again, and thought about the girl she'd been a year ago. The one who'd walked into a ceremony wearing a dead mother's dress and a desperate plan. That girl had been terrified of being erased, of becoming nothing. Instead, she'd become everything. Luna, reformer, protector. The white wolf who'd survived suppression and turned her pain into power that reshaped the wolf world. And she wasn't done yet. News arrived a week later that changed everything one final time. A messenger burst into the war room where Leora and Theron were reviewing territory reports. My lord, my lady, news from the western borderlands. A pack has reported suspected suppression cases. But this time, the messenger swallowed hard. They say it's different. The wolves aren't being suppressed. They're being transformed against their will, forced to shift without control. Leora and Theron exchanged glances. A new threat, a new challenge. Prepare a team, Leora said immediately. I'll lead the investigation. We'll lead it, Theron corrected, together. She smiled. Together. As they gathered their supplies and assembled their team, Leora caught her reflection in a polished shield hanging on the war room wall. She barely recognized herself anymore. Stronger, harder, crowned, and dangerous. The girl they'd tried to erase had become the Luna who rewrote destiny. And whatever came next, she was ready. The White Wolf of Shadowkeep stood with her mate beside her, her sanctuary behind her, and her mission ahead of her. The frontier had tried to break her, had poisoned her, hidden her, dismissed her. But Leora Vance had survived, had conquered, had transformed from victim to protector, and she was just getting started. The frontier territories stretched out before her, full of wolves who needed protection, systems that needed reform, and challenges that would test everything she'd become. She'd face them all, and she'd win, because she knew what it meant to lose everything and fight your way back, because she remembered what it felt like to be empty, and would never let another wolf feel that way if she could prevent it. The girl they'd tried to erase had become impossible to ignore, and the entire wolf world would be better for it.